Chapter 129. Just as Yi Xian and the other 5 charged towards the men in black, dozens of silver crossbow bolts suddenly shot towards them. These crossbow bolts were spirit weapons as well. How bold! Yi Xian suddenly stopped and roared, "Get behind me!" The 5 of them did not hesitate as they stood in a row and hid behind Yi Xian. Yi Xian stomped his right foot on the ground. Boom! In an instant, the earth shook violently. In an instant, the power of the earth gathered around his body. Armor of Mother Earth. Yi Xian held the spirit elegant sword in his hand for a while, and waves of sword gleams shot out. Although these sword gleams blocked most of the crossbow bolts, there were still some crossbow bolts that pierced through his sword gleams and landed on his body. However, the armor of Mother Earth on his body blocked these crossbow bolts, but it was still very painful. Just as the men in black were about to fire a second round of crossbow bolts, Yi Xian suddenly stomped his right foot and shot towards the group of men in black like an arrow released from a bow. Kill! Behind Yi Xian, the 5 of them also charged out. Before Yi Xian arrived, the spirit elegant sword in his hand flew out. This strike contained sword force, battle intent, and sword intent. Most importantly, there was also the power of the earth. The speed and power of this strike had completely exceeded the limits of the Nether Passage realm. Pest! The leading man in black was pierced through the abdomen by this strike. At this moment, a huge sword suddenly appeared in Yi Xian's hand. The big black sword. With the big black sword in hand, Yi Xian leaped up and arrived in front of one of the men in black. Then, he slashed down with his sword. The power of this strike was too terrifying. It was as though this strike could split the earth, and its power was incomparably domineering. The eyes of the man in black suddenly constricted. He abandoned his crossbow and pulled out a black saber from his waist to slash at Yi Xian's big black sword. Bam! The moment the two collided, the man in black's saber instantly shattered. At the same time, the man in black was smashed into pieces by Yi Xian's strike. Shattering with a single strike. After obtaining the power of earth, his strength had increased by more than a little. It could be said that he could have easily killed a Nether Passage realm expert, but at this moment, these Nether Passage realm experts were not ordinary Nether Passage realm experts. Moreover, in order to end the battle quickly, he did not dare to hold back and directly used the power of the earth. After killing the man in black, he swung his sword to the side. A powerful golden sword light surged out like a tidal wave. Boom! A black-robed man who was several zhang away was instantly sent flying. At the same time, the elegant spirit sword pierced through the forehead of a black-clothed man at almost the same time. Kill! Yi Xian vanished on the spot once more. Rays of light flickered incessantly while more and more blood covered the ground. What was worth mentioning was that the 5 people following Yi Xian were also extremely powerful. The 5 of them could fight against several people at once, and they were not at a disadvantage at all. Especially Ling Han, who wielded a long spear. The number of people he killed was second only to Yi Xian. In the field, the group of black-clothed men became fewer and fewer. And behind Yi Xian and the others, the battle situation was still fierce. 7 people against hundreds of black blade guards. Fortunately, it was in the dense forest, and these black blade guards could not get into formation. Otherwise, Lu Banzwang and the others would not be able to block them at all. Even so, Lu Banzwang and the others were still in a terrible situation. Even the powerful Lu Banzwang had been injured at this moment. Time passed bit by bit, and soon, half an hour was up. On the other side, Yi Xian held the large black sword in his hand and suddenly threw it forward. 10 zhang away. Pang! A black-clothed man was instantly smashed into pieces by this large black sword. With the death of this black-clothed man, all the black-clothed men in the field were dead. However, Yi Xian and the others were all seriously injured. But fortunately, no one died. Yi Xian quickly put away the bows and arrows of the black-clothed men, turned around, and ran not far away. Support them. The 5 people behind Yi Xian hurriedly rushed over. Soon, Yi Xian and the others arrived at the battlefield where Lu Banzwang and the others were. Without any nonsense, Yi Xian directly threw the large black sword in his hand toward a black blade guard not far away. Pang! The black blade guard was directly smashed into meat paste by this sword. Retreat! At this moment, an angry shout suddenly came from the group of black blade guards not far away. Soon, the black blade guards retreated like the tide. Yi Xian and the others did not give chase because their current situation was not very good. Soon, The group of Black Blade guards retreated out of the dense forest and came to an open space. Next to the masked man, a Black Blade guard said in a low voice, "Commander, those people are all seriously injured. We have a chance to kill them." The masked man shook his head. "The space inside is narrow and not suitable for us to fight. Even if we can kill them in the end, with the combat strength of those dozen people, I'm afraid we will all be wiped out." As he said this, he glanced at the dense forest. "If we go further in, we will reach this swamp. They can't advance at all. Let's surround this place and wait for reinforcements." Next to the masked man, a Black Blade guard said in a low voice, "Commander, these 13 people are all geniuses. Ordinary people are no match for them." The masked man sneered. "Don't worry, there are many people here who want Yi Xian dead. Pass down my order. Everyone, stay alert. Don't let them escape." "Yes," the Black Blade guards replied in unison. In the dense forest, Yi Xian and the others sat in front of a pool. At this moment, half of the pool had been dyed red. It was all their own blood. Almost everyone was injured in the previous battle. The one who suffered the most was a man called Xiangyu. His entire right leg had been chopped off. Yi Xian walked over to Xiangyu and took out a golden sore pill. He was about to pass it to Xiangyu, but Xiangyu shook his head. "Don't waste it." Yi Xian forcefully stuffed the golden sore pill into Xiangyu's mouth. The latter looked at Yi Xian and didn't say a word. Yi Xian glanced at everyone. Although he couldn't see, he could feel that everyone was extremely tired at this moment. Because the previous battle had really consumed too much of their energy. Their injuries and exhaustion could be said to be very bad. The atmosphere was slightly heavy. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly smiled. "Are all of you afraid?" Everyone looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. "We have no way out. At worst, we'll die. What do all of you think?" Everyone laughed when they heard this. "That's right. At worst, we'll die. Anyway, there's no worse ending than this." Yi Xian said solemnly, "According to my speculation, those people outside are waiting for reinforcements. There must be reinforcements, but I don't know what kind of reinforcements they are. Just now, our people went to the front to take a look. Not far ahead is a boundless swamp. It's even more unrealistic for us to pass through this swamp. The only thing we can do now is to kill our way out of the encirclement. Of course, it's very difficult because those hundreds of people are well-trained elites. Moreover, we're seriously injured. However, we have no other choice." Everyone fell silent. Yi Xian looked at Lu Banzwang. "Do you have any other ideas?" Lu Banzwang shook his head. "We can't kill our way out. Those people are all men of sacrifice. They won't retreat at all. At this moment, all of us are seriously injured. If we force our way out, except for one or two of us, the rest will die." As she spoke, she glanced at Yi Xian. "Do you understand what I mean?" Yi Xian fell silent. He naturally understood Lu Banzwang's meaning, but he neglected one point. He still had battle power, so did Lu Banzwang. Both of them were top-notch, so it wouldn't be too difficult for them to rush out. But what about Ling Han and the others? Although Ling Han and the others were also strong, after the bloody battle just now, they only had about 50 to 60% of their strength left. If they rushed out now, those soldiers were not afraid of death. Not to mention Ling Han and the others, even he and Lu Banzwang would be in danger. However, if they didn't rush out, when the Tang Empire's reinforcements arrived, everyone would still die. The situation was very bad. At this moment, an old man suddenly appeared not far away. Lu Banzwang subconsciously wanted to attack, but was stopped by Yi Xian. Because he was very familiar with the clothes worn by the black-robed old man in front of him. It was the clothes of the drunken immortal building. The old man quickly walked in front of Yi Xian and bowed slightly. "Young Master Yi," Yi Xian said. "And?" The old man said in a low voice. This old man received the 5th floor master's order to come and help young Master Yi. 5th floor master. Yi Xian was stunned. Soon he remembered. The 9th floor master of the drunken immortal building had been promoted to the 5th floor master. Yi Xian said in a low voice, "How do we help?" The old man said, 300 miles away from here, there is a city called Guinan City. Young Master Yi and the others must go to the Drunken Immortal building because the Tang Empire's army is surrounding you from all directions. You can't escape from other places. Yi Xian said. Continue. The old man glanced outside the bamboo forest and said, Later, the people of the Drunken Immortal building will take action. At that time, young Master Yi and the others will rush out of the chaos and go straight to Guinan City. We have people inside to receive you. Yi Xian nodded. That's good. The old man glanced at Yi Xian and the others. Everyone, can we start now? Yi Xian looked at Lu Banzwang. Lu Banzwang was silent for a moment, then nodded. Let's go. With that, she looked at Shangyu, who had a broken leg. Shangyu grinned. You guys go. I won't be able to leave. Lu Banzwang looked at Yi Li beside him. You'll be responsible for taking care of him later. Yi Li nodded. Understood. Lu Banzwang looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian looked at the old man. The old man nodded. At this moment, the sound of fighting suddenly came from outside the forest. It was very intense. Yi Xian said, Let's go. Everyone jumped onto the black wolves. In the next moment, the 13 of them rushed out of the forest. When they rushed out of the forest, there were dozens of black-robed people fighting with the Black Blade Guards. Among them, there were actually 20 divine combination realm experts. Yi Xian rode in the front. The exquisite sword constantly shuttled in front of him. Every time it shuttled, it would bring along a stream of blood. At this moment, the masked man not far away suddenly shouted angrily, Stop them! Soon, most of the Black Blade Guards surrounded Yi Xian and the rest. However, they were quickly stopped by the divine combination realm experts from the Drunken Immortal Inn. Yi Xian and the rest rushed out of the encirclement of the Black Blade Guards. However, very soon, Yi Xian and the rest's expressions suddenly turned grave. A man holding a crescent moon blade stood about 300 meters in front of Yi Xian and the rest. The man looked rather young and was only in his 20s. His long hair was draped over his chest and he had a sinister smile on his face. Behind the man, there were another 20 people. All of them were holding long blades and wearing iron armor. At this moment, the man suddenly shouted angrily, Kill! With that, he directly rushed towards Yi Xian and the rest. His long blade dragged on the ground, causing sparks to fly everywhere. Then the ground cracked inch by inch. His aura was also rising crazily. Divine Combination Realm. Chapter 130. Saber Path Master. Yi Xian and the others' expressions immediately turned grave. It was not that they were afraid, but this time, a Saber Path Master had actually come, and he was so young. Obviously, this was no longer just the Tang Empire targeting them. Behind this, there must be the Karaki Academy, the Dark World, and even the Great Cloud Empire in the Great Cloud Realm. The man with the long saber and the others were extremely fast, and their momentum was like a rainbow. Although there were only about 20 people, they had the momentum of a magnificent army. Momentum. Before the man with the long saber and the others arrived, their momentum had already struck first. And it was this momentum that actually forced the Black Wolf under Yi Xian and the others to stop. At this moment, Lu Banzwang suddenly looked at Yi Xian. Do you want to hit him or should I? Yi Xian thought for a moment, then made a gesture of invitation. Please. Lu Banzwang nodded. I'll leave the remaining 20 people to you. The rest of the brothers, retreat first. Don't talk nonsense. Leave immediately. As soon as she finished speaking, her entire body directly floated out. Her speed was so fast that there was actually an afterimage behind her. Under everyone's gaze, Lu Banzwang tapped his foot in the air. It was like a dragonfly touching the surface of the water lightly. However, it was precisely this tap that forcefully broke the saber momentum of the man with the long saber. The pupils of the man with the long saber constricted slightly. In the next moment, he held his saber and suddenly swung upwards. Swoosh! The air was directly torn apart. Lu Banzwang still tapped his foot. Bam! The man with the long saber instantly retreated several feet away. As soon as he stopped, the ground under his feet instantly cracked. The man with the long saber stared at Lu Banzwang. You're not on the martial roll. Lu Banzwang slowly walked towards the man with the long saber. Martial roll? I only recognize the monster ranking. As soon as he finished speaking, his entire body directly floated out. Not far away, beside Yi Xian, Yi Li suddenly said, "Big Sis is on the monster ranking." Monster ranking. Yi Xian nodded slightly and did not think too much about it. After seeing that Lu Banzwang could contend against the man with the long saber, he said, "You guys leave first." As soon as he finished speaking, the spirit elegant sword at his waist directly flew out. Not far away, an armored man wielding a saber fiercely slashed at Yi Xian's spirit elegant sword. Swish! The spirit elegant sword directly shattered the armored man's long saber, then directly penetrated and pierced the armored man's armor. However, that armor actually forcefully blocked the spirit elegant sword. However, the armored man was also shaken by Yi Xian's sword and was forced to continuously retreat. And at this moment, a hand suddenly grasped the spirit elegant sword. In the next moment, the spirit elegant sword slashed horizontally and pierced through the armored man's neck. Swish! A bloody head flew out in an instant. In the distance, the moment Yi Xian charged out, Yi Li and the others directly rode their black wolves and charged into the distance. Go! They had never disobeyed Lu Banzwang's orders. At this moment, it was not the time to talk about loyalty. At this moment, to Yi Xian and Lu Banzwang, the fewer people there were, the easier it would be for them to leave. After Yi Li and the others left, Yi Xian was instantly surrounded by 19 armored men. And at this moment, he could no longer achieve an instant kill, because those 19 armored men attacked and defended at the same time. Right now, he had absolutely no chance to kill them. Not only did he not have a chance to kill them, but he even showed signs of being suppressed. And on the other side, Lu Banzwang was suppressing the man wielding the long saber. Yi Xian was very shocked. That man wielding the long saber was a saber Dao master, but Lu Banzwang was actually suppressing him. Really not simple. At this moment, Lu Banzwang, who was not far away, suddenly said, "Retreat!" As her voice fell, she suddenly slammed her palm on the ground. Boom! The ground around her and the man wielding the long saber was directly lifted up. After a moment of silence, a figure suddenly flew out. This figure was that man wielding the long saber. The man wielding the long saber flew more than 100 feet away. On the other hand, Lu Banzwang suddenly appeared by Yi Xian's side. In the next moment, the armored men on both sides of Yi Xian were directly blasted away. Immediately after, Lu Banzwang carried Yi Xian and dashed forward. Swish! With this charge, he actually managed to cover a distance of 500 feet in an instant. And when the man wielding the long saber and the others were about to continue chasing, Lu Banzwang and Yi Xian had already appeared more than 300 feet away, and they had completely widened the distance between them. However, when they were about to continue chasing, a voice suddenly rang out by their ears. "Don't chase after her. That woman is on the genius ranking of the Central Divine Prefecture." The monster ranking. The man wielding the long saber narrowed his eyes slightly when he heard this. Qingzhou had the martial ranking, but the Divine Central Continent had the monster ranking. The value of the monster ranking wasn't something the martial ranking could compare to. After all, the monster ranking was the goal of all the geniuses in the firmament world. Only the most monstrous geniuses in the firmament world were able to enter the ranking. The man wielding the long saber said in a low voice, "What does the higher-ups intend to do?" After a moment of silence, the voice resounded once more. "Await orders. The higher-ups have already sent someone over." The man nodded and said fiercely, "So what if it's the monster ranking? Xiahou Dao will definitely kill them." Xiahou Dao, the 6th on the Qingzhou martial ranking. Along with the departure of Yi Xian and the others, the experts of the Drunken Immortal retreated successively. However, this wasn't the end of the matter. At a certain place, Lu Banzwang suddenly stopped carrying Yi Xian. At this moment, Yi Xian's face was pale, and his breathing was chaotic. He seemed as if he was seriously ill. His speed was too swift. Lu Banzwang's speed was too fast, so fast that it was abnormal. It could be said that if he hadn't cultivated to the golden body realm, he would probably have been torn to shreds. Lu Banzwang glanced at Yi Xian. "Not only do you cultivate martial arts and swordsmanship, but your physical body is also amazing. Are you interested in exploring the Divine Central Continent?" Yi Xian patted his slightly stuffy chest, then nodded. "I'll go." Lu Banzwang nodded, then whistled. Soon, 2 black wolves ran over from afar. The two of them leaped onto the black wolves and disappeared not far away in the blink of an eye. Yi Xian and Lu Banzhuang ran wildly on the black wolves. The two of them were extremely fast, and in less than an hour, they caught up with Yi Li and the others. When they saw that Yi Xian and Lu Banzhuang were fine, Yi Li and the others heaved a sigh of relief. Soon, they arrived at Gainan City. This time, there were no soldiers on the city walls. Not only that, but when they arrived at the foot of the city walls, the city gate suddenly opened, and a person came out to greet them. The old man walked quickly to Yi Xian and bowed slightly. "Young Master Yi, please follow me." Under the old man's lead, the group entered the city. When they entered the city, more than a dozen black-robed people immediately appeared around them. 8 of them were in the divine combination realm, and these people were the powerhouses of the Drunken Immortal Restaurant. Just like that, under the escort of the powerhouses of the Drunken Immortal Restaurant, Yi Xian arrived at the Drunken Immortal Restaurant, and the dozen black-robed people guarded the surroundings vigilantly. Yi Xian. After knowing that Yi Xian had appeared in the Tang Kingdom, the 5th floor master of the Jiang Kingdom immediately notified the Drunken Immortal Restaurant of the Tang Kingdom to protect Yi Xian with all their strength. Not only that, even the 3rd floor master of the Qingzhou side sent a message to help as much as possible. Although Yi Xian had become mortal enemies with the Karaki Academy and the Dark World, the Drunken Immortal Restaurant did not care about this. To the Drunken Immortal Restaurant, they had already established a relationship with Yi Xian and his master. At this time, they naturally had to do their best to rope Yi Xian in. There were 2 sides to everything. The Drunken Immortal Restaurant would offend the Karaki Academy and the Dark World because of this, but they would also gain the friendship of Yi Xian and his master. Inside the room, everyone sat around a large table, and the Drunken Immortal Restaurant had already prepared a meal. Not only was there food, there was also a medical grandmaster treating everyone's injuries. This treatment could not be any better. Everyone was obviously very hungry, and they began to devour the food on the table in a frenzy. Not far away, the elder of the Drunken Immortal Restaurant was standing quietly. Yi Xian faced the elder, and the elder hurriedly bowed slightly. "Young Master Yi, do you have any instructions?" Yi Xian said. "How should I address you?" The elder hurriedly said, "Young Master Yi, you can just call me Steward Wu." "Oh, that's right, our 8th floor master has already gone to investigate, and will return in a while." Yi Xian nodded. "Many thanks." The elder bowed slightly. He glanced at Yi Xian and the others, and then quietly retreated. Not far away, Ling Han suddenly asked, "Are you very familiar with the Drunken Immortal Restaurant?" Yi Xian nodded. "Very familiar." Ling Han nodded. This Drunken Immortal Restaurant is also very famous in the Divine Central Continent, and is not the slightest bit inferior to Karaki Academy or Azure Billow Academy. They actually treat you like this, so you're not simple. Yi Xian smiled and said, "You guys are not simple either, are you?" Ling Han chuckled and did not speak. The people here were actually not simple. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly said, "Previously, we seized a batch of top-grade spirit weapon crossbows. I want to keep these top-grade spirit weapon crossbows, and I'll split the gold coins with you." Beside him, Lu Banzhuang suddenly shook his head. "You keep them, no need to split them." Yi Xian faced Lu Banzhuang, and Lu Banzhuang said calmly, "I want to make friends with you, don't refuse." Beside him, Yi Li nibbled on a chicken drumstick, and then nodded. "Big Sis is right. You can have that batch of top-grade spirit weapons. Just treat it as us making friends with you." Ling Han nodded. Brother Yi is a straightforward person, and also a loyal person. "We'll make friends with you." Yi Xian still wanted to say something, but Lu Banzhuang looked at him and said, "Just take it. It's a gesture of goodwill from everyone, so don't be fussy. In the future, we won't go easy on you." Yi Xian thought about it, and then nodded. "Thank you, brothers." At this moment, a middle-aged man suddenly walked in. The middle-aged man glanced at Yi Xian and the others, and then he cupped his fists and said, "Everyone, I'm the 8th master of the Drunken Immortal Tower from the Tang Kingdom." Everyone also stood up to return the salute, because this 8th master was in the 10,000 Dama tier. The 8th master walked in front of Yi Xian and said in a low voice, "Little friend Yi, the situation is not looking good." Yi Xian frowned slightly. "What's wrong?" The 8th master glanced at everyone and said, "According to the news I've received, The Karaki Academy and the Dark Realm have offered a sky-high price in Qingzhou to kill you. So far, there are already 3 people on the martial roll who are rushing over here, and it's even possible that the person ranked first will also come, because the Drunken Immortal Tower and the Dark Realm have offered a heaven-level mid-level martial arts technique and a heaven-level mid-level cultivation technique. Apart from that, there's also a bright-level high-grade spirit weapon. Speaking up to this point, he paused slightly, and then continued, "That's not all. According to the Drunken Immortal Tower's information, they've used some unknown means to convince King Kaoshan of the Great Cloud Empire. Now, the Great Cloud Empire has also made their move. The black-clothed crossbow team you encountered earlier was sent by the Great Cloud Empire. Now they may directly exert pressure on the Jiang country, or even directly send experts here. Or perhaps, they're already on their way here." Yi Xian and the others fell silent. The 8th Master continued, "Also, there's news from the Divine Central Continent. The Karaki Academy and the Dark Realm have already transferred people from the Divine Central Continent here." As he spoke, he glanced at Yi Xian and the others. This time they're serious, and they're going to do it at all costs. At this moment, Lu Banzwang suddenly drank a mouthful of water, and then smashed the bowl heavily on the table. "Call for reinforcements." Next to him, Ling Han hesitated, and then said, "Sister, do we also have to call for reinforcements on the monster list?" Lu Banzwang said indifferently, "Yes." The 8th Master. Chapter 131. Saber Dao Grandmaster. The expressions of Yi Xian and the rest turned grave. It wasn't that they were afraid, but that a Saber Dao Grandmaster had come this time, and he was so young. Obviously, it wasn't just the Tang Empire that was targeting them. Behind this, there must be Karaki College, Dark World, and even the Great Cloud Empire in the Great Cloud Realm. The man with the long saber and the rest were extremely fast, and their momentum was like a rainbow. There were only 20 people, but they had the momentum of a magnificent army. Momentum. Before the man with the long saber and the rest arrived, the momentum had already attacked. And it was this momentum that actually forced the Black Wolves under Yi Xian and the rest to stop. At this moment, Lu Banzwang suddenly looked at Yi Xian. "Do you want to fight him or should I?" Yi Xian thought for a moment, then made a gesture of invitation. "Please." Lu Banzwang nodded. "I'll leave the remaining 20 people to you. The rest of the brothers, retreat first. Don't talk nonsense. Leave immediately." As soon as she finished speaking, she floated out. Her speed was so fast that an afterimage appeared behind her. Under everyone's gaze, Lu Banzwang tapped her foot in the air. It was like a dragonfly skimming the surface of the water, but it was this point that forcefully broke the saber momentum of the man with the long saber. The eyes of the man with the long saber constricted, and the next moment, he raised his saber and slashed upwards. Chi! The air was directly torn apart. Lu Banzwang still tapped her foot. Bang! The man with the long saber retreated several feet, and as soon as he stopped, the ground beneath his feet instantly cracked. The man with the long saber stared at Lu Banzwang. "You're not on the martial roll." Lu Banzwang slowly walked towards the man with the long saber. "Martial roll? I only recognize the monster ranking." As soon as he finished speaking, he floated out. Not far away, beside Yi Xian, Yili suddenly said, "Big sister is on the monster ranking." Monster ranking. Yi Xian nodded slightly and did not think much about it. After seeing that Lu Banzwang could contend with a man with a long saber, he said, "You guys leave first." As soon as he finished speaking, the spirit elegant sword at his waist flew out. Not far away, an armored man wielded a saber and slashed at Yi Xian's spirit elegant sword. Chi! The exquisite sword directly shattered the armored man's long saber, and then it pierced the armored man's armor. However, the armor had actually forcefully blocked the exquisite sword. However, the armored man was also forced to retreat repeatedly by Yi Xian's sword. At this moment, a hand suddenly held onto the Lingxiu sword. In the next moment, the Lingxiu sword slashed horizontally and pierced through the armored man's neck. Chi! A bloody head flew out in an instant. In the distance, the moment Yi Xian charged out, Yili and the others immediately rode their black wolves and charged into the distance. "Let's go." They had never disobeyed Lu Banzwang. This wasn't the time to talk about loyalty. For Yi Xian and Lu Banzwang, the fewer people there were, the easier it would be for them to leave. After Yi Li and the others left, Yi Xian was instantly surrounded by 19 armored men. At this moment, he could no longer insta-kill his opponent. Because the 19 armored men attacked and defended at the same time, he didn't have a chance to insta-kill them. Not only did he not have a chance to insta-kill them, but he even showed signs of being suppressed. On the other side, Lu Banzwang was suppressing the man with the long saber. Yi Xian was extremely shocked. The man with the long saber was a Saber Dao Grandmaster, but Lu Banzwang was actually suppressing him. He really wasn't simple. At this moment, Lu Banzwang suddenly said, "Retreat!" As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly slapped her palm on the ground. Bang! The ground around her and the man with the long saber was lifted up. After a moment of silence, a figure suddenly flew out. This figure was the man with the long saber. The man with the long saber flew over 30 meters away. Meanwhile, Lu Banzwang suddenly appeared beside Yi Xian. In the next moment, the armored men on Yi Xian's left and right were directly sent flying. Subsequently, Lu Banzwang carried Yi Xian and charged forward. Chi! With this charge, he actually managed to cover a distance of 500 feet in an instant. When the man with the long saber and the others were about to continue their pursuit, Lu Banzwang and Yi Xian had already appeared 1,000 feet away, completely distancing themselves from them. However, just as they were about to give chase, a voice suddenly rang in their ears. "Stop chasing. That woman is on the genius ranking of the Central Divine Prefecture. The demon-level genius list." Hearing this, the man with the long blade narrowed his eyes. The Azure Province had a martial ranking, but the Central Divine Prefecture had a monstrous genius ranking. The value of the monstrous talents board was not something the martial ranking could compare to. After all, the monstrous talents board was the goal of all the geniuses in the Azure Firmament world. Those who could enter the ranking were the most monstrous geniuses in the Azure Firmament world. The man with the long saber said in a deep voice, "What are the higher-ups planning to do?" After a moment of silence, the voice sounded again. "Awaiting orders. The higher-ups have already sent someone over." The man with the long saber nodded and said fiercely, "So what if you're on the demon list? I, Xiahou Dao, will definitely kill him." Xiahou Dao. He was ranked 6th on the Azure Province martial roll. With the departure of Yi Xian and the others, the experts of the Drunken Immortal House also retreated. However, this wasn't the end of the matter. At a certain place, Lu Banzwang, who was holding Yi Xian in his hand, suddenly stopped moving. At this moment, Yi Xian's countenance was pale while his aura was in chaos, and he seemed as if he was seriously ill. His speed was too swift. Lu Banzwang's speed was too swift, and it was unnaturally swift. It could be said that if he hadn't cultivated to the aureate body realm, then he would have probably been torn into pieces. Lu Banzwang glanced at Yi Xian and said, "You don't just cultivate in the sword and martial arts, your body is extraordinary as well. Are you interested in wandering the Central Divine Prefecture?" Yi Xian patted his slightly heavy chest, and then he nodded. "I will." Lu Banzwang nodded, and then he whistled. It didn't take long for 2 black wolves to run over from afar, and then they leaped onto their black wolves and vanished in the blink of an eye. Yi Xian and Lu Banzwang dashed madly on their black wolves. They were extremely swift, and they caught up to Yi Li and the others in less than an hour. Yi Li and the others heaved sighs of relief when they saw that Yi Xian and Lu Banzwang were fine. Soon, they arrived at Gainan City. This time, there were no soldiers on the city walls. Not only that, but when they arrived at the foot of the city walls, the city gate suddenly opened, and a person came out to welcome them. The old man walked quickly to Yi Xian and bowed slightly. "Young Master Yi, please follow me." Under the old man's lead, everyone entered the city. When they entered the city, over a dozen black-robed men immediately appeared around them. 8 of them were divine combination realm experts, and they were all experts of the Drunken Immortal Inn. Just like that, under the escort of the experts of the Drunken Immortal Inn, Yi Xian arrived at the Drunken Immortal Inn, and the dozen black-robed men guarded the surroundings vigilantly. Yi Xian. After knowing that Yi Xian had appeared in the Tang Kingdom, the 5th House Master of the Jiang Kingdom immediately informed the Drunken Immortal Inn to protect him with all their might. Not only that, even the 3rd House Master of the Qingzhou Kingdom sent a message to help. Although Yi Xian, Kuraki Academy, and Dark World had become mortal enemies, the Drunken Immortal Inn did not care about this. To the Drunken Immortal Inn, they had already established a relationship with Yi Xian and his master. At this time, they naturally had to rope them in. There were two sides to everything. The drunken immortal inn would offend Xueqi Academy and Dark World, but they would also gain the friendship of Yi Xian and Yi Xian's master. Inside the room, everyone sat around a large table. The drunken immortal inn had already prepared a meal. Not only was there food, there was also a medical Dao grandmaster treating everyone's injuries. This treatment was simply too good. Everyone was obviously very hungry, and they crazily devoured the food on the table. Not far away, the old man of the drunken immortal inn stood quietly. Yi Xian turned to face the old man, and the old man hurriedly bowed slightly. "Young Master Yi, do you have any instructions?" Yi Xian asked. "How should I address you?" The old man hurriedly said, "Young Master Yi, you can just call me Manager Wu." "Oh, that's right, our 8th housemaster has already gone to investigate, and will return in a while." Yi Xian nodded. "Many thanks." The old man bowed slightly. He glanced at Yi Xian and the others, and then silently retreated. Nearby, Ling Han suddenly asked, "Are you very familiar with the Drunken Immortal Inn?" Yi Xian nodded. "Very familiar." Ling Han nodded and said, "This Drunken Immortal Inn is also very famous in the Divine Middle Continent, and is not the slightest bit inferior to Xueqi Academy and Azure Billow Academy. They actually treat you like this, so you are very extraordinary." Yi Xian smiled and said, "Everyone is also extraordinary, isn't that so?" Ling Han chuckled, and did not say anything. The people here were actually all extraordinary. At this time, Yi Xian suddenly said, "Previously, we seized a batch of Supreme-grade Spirit Tool crossbows. I want to keep these Supreme-grade Spirit Tool crossbows, and I'll split the gold coins with you." Beside him, Lu Banzwang suddenly shook his head. "You keep them, no need to split them." Yi Xian faced Lu Banzwang, and Lu Banzwang said calmly, "Don't refuse to be friends with you." Beside him, Yili nibbled on a chicken drumstick, and then nodded. "Big sister is right. You can have that batch of supreme-grade spirit tools. Just treat it as us being friends with you." Ling Han nodded and said, "Brother Yi is a straightforward person, and also a loyal person. We'll be friends with you." Yi Xian still wanted to say something, but Lu Banzwang glanced at him and said, "Just take it. Everyone has good intentions, so don't be overly sentimental. In the future, we won't be polite with you." Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then nodded. "Then I'll thank you, brothers." At this time, a middle-aged man suddenly walked in. The middle-aged man glanced at Yi Xian and the others, and then he clasped his hands in greeting. "Everyone, I am the 8th floor master of the Drunken Immortal Inn of the Tang Empire." Everyone stood up to return the greeting. Because this 8th floor master was in the 10,000 laws tier. The 8th floor master walked in front of Yi Xian, and said in a low voice, "Young friend Yi, the situation is not good." Yi Xian frowned slightly and said, "What's wrong?" The 8th floor master glanced at everyone and said, "According to the news I've received, the Xueqi Academy and the Dark Realm have offered an exorbitant price to kill you in Qing Province. At present, there are already 3 people on the martial roll rushing over here, and it's possible that the person ranked first will also come, because the Drunken Immortal Inn and the Dark Realm have offered a Heaven-tier mid-level martial arts technique and a Heaven-tier mid-level cultivation technique. Apart from that, there's also a light-tier high-grade spirit tool." At this point he paused slightly and continued, "That's still nothing. According to the Drunken Immortal Inn's information, they've used some unknown method to convince King Kaoshan of the Great Cloud Empire, and now the Great Cloud Empire has also made their move. The black-robed crossbow team that you encountered previously was sent by the Great Cloud Empire, and now, it's possible that they'll directly exert pressure on the Zhong Empire, or even directly send elites here, or in other words, they're already on their way here." Yi Xian and the others fell silent. The 8th floor master continued, "There's also news from the Divine Central Continent that the Xueqi Academy and the Dark Realm have already sent people over from the Divine Central Continent." As he spoke, he glanced at Yi Xian and the others, and continued, "This time they're serious, and they're going to do it at all costs." Right at this moment, Lu Banzwang suddenly drank a mouthful of water, and then he slammed the bowl heavily on the table. "Call for reinforcements." Ling Han hesitated for a moment, and then he said, "Big sister, do we have to call even those on the monstrous genius rankings?" Lu Banzwang replied indifferently, "Yes." The 8th floor master. Chapter 132. Everyone present was stunned when they saw Xueqi commit suicide. Ling Han suddenly roared, "Xueqi, you're AF** king idiot. Super idiot." Gan Wuwei squatted on the ground and kept hitting the ground, choking. "Idiot, I've blocked the attack for you for nothing." At this moment, Lu Banzwang suddenly roared, "Go, go!" As soon as she finished speaking, she kicked a spear on the ground, and the spear shot out. Chi! Dozens of meters away, several soldiers were pierced by the spear and died on the spot. Ling Han and the others also mounted their wolves and charged into the distance under Lu Banzwang's lead. But soon, they were surrounded again. There were too many of them. And Yi Xian was also trapped by them at the moment. He could not help them at all. The divine combination tier elites of the drunken immortal restaurant were also held back by countless soldiers. Fortunately, they were there. Otherwise, Yi Xian and the others wouldn't have lasted until now. In the distance, pang! With a loud explosion, Yi Xian's heavy sword pushed him back dozens of meters. But soon, over 20 people charged at him. Pang pang pang. Besieged by more than 20 people, Yi Xian was forced to retreat several hundred feet. There were already several knife wounds on his body, and each of them was extremely deep. He had just stopped, and the 20 people surrounded him again. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes. Chi chi! 2 sword lights shot out from his eye sockets like 2 bolts of lightning, and the 3 black-armored guards in front of him were instantly slashed into 2, whereas the rest of the black-armored guards retreated rapidly in order to avoid the 2 sword lights. At this moment, Xiahou Dao suddenly appeared above Yi Xian's head. The next moment, a large saber slashed at Yi Xian's head. This saber strike contained saber intent and saber technique, and its power was unparalleled. A sinister smile appeared on Yi Xian's face. He didn't retreat, and instead swung his large black sword upwards. Head on. Bang! With an ear-piercing explosion, Xiahou Dao was sent flying more than 100 feet away, while Yi Xian was also sent flying dozens of feet away. However, as soon as he stopped, a dozen black-armored men appeared around him once again. Right at this moment, a ray of light suddenly flew out from within Yi Xian. In the next moment, the head of a guard on Yi Xian's left instantly flew into the air. Exquisite Spirit Sword. Sword Control Technique. The expressions of those black-armored guards instantly changed drastically when they saw this exquisite sword, and they retreated in unison with extreme vigilance. This flying sword was a little elusive, and they were extremely wary of it. At this time, Lu Banzwang and the others also approached Yi Xian. They stood back to back, and around them were countless soldiers, as well as Xiahou Dao and the others. At this moment, they were surrounded so tightly that not even a drop of water could trickle through. The powerhouses of the drunken immortal pavilion were also being held up and couldn't help them at all. In fact, it should be said that they couldn't even save themselves. There were at least tens of thousands of soldiers around them. It was already a hopeless situation. In order to kill them, the Tang Empire was willing to pay any price. Yi Xian wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and said with a smile, "Everyone, there's no point in saying anything now that things have come to this. Let's kill to our heart's content." With that, he suddenly stomped his right foot and shot out explosively. Before he arrived, his sword arrived first. Swish! A soldier's head was instantly cut off by his sword. Yi Li suddenly roared angrily, "Then let's kill to our heart's content." As soon as he finished speaking, he also rushed out. Soon, Gan Wuwei and the others also rushed out. Yi Xian and the others were all 1 in a million geniuses, but at this moment, they still seemed so powerless in front of this army. At this moment of despair, a cavalryman from the Tang Empire suddenly rushed over from afar. This cavalryman quickly rushed to the leader of the Black Blade Guards, and then knelt on one knee. Report. Marshal Pei has ordered the Black Blade Guards and the Daredevil Battalion to immediately rush to 2 World City. The masked man suddenly pulled out a long saber and placed it on the cavalryman's neck. He said angrily, "What did you say?" The cavalryman looked directly at the masked man. The 9th princess of the Jiang country suddenly launched a surprise attack. 2 World City is seriously short of manpower. If Marshal Pei and the others are defeated, the Jiang country's army can immediately come to the Tang Empire's hinterland. Commander Dao and the Daredevil Battalion, please immediately go to support. The Jiang country. The masked man's expression was terrifying. Damn the Jiang country! With that, he looked at Yi Xian and the others not far away. At this moment, Yi Xian and the others had already been surrounded. It could be said that at most an hour, they could forcibly exhaust Yi Xian and the others to death. If they gave up at this time, all their efforts would be in vain. At this moment, the cavalryman said in a deep voice, "Commander Dao, please focus on the overall situation. Focus on the overall situation." The masked man stared at Yi Xian and the others in the distance. If he gave up at this time, he would naturally be very unwilling. However, if he didn't give up, in order to annihilate Yi Xian and the others, the Tang Empire not only sent soldiers from all over, but also the Daredevil Battalion from Two World City. In this case, the military strength of Two World City was naturally insufficient. However, he didn't expect that Jiang Jiu would dare to take the initiative to attack when the Jiang country was facing enemies on several sides. Report. At this moment, another cavalryman came quickly. The cavalryman quickly came to the masked man. "Marshal Pei has ordered you to return to Two World City to support. Those who disobey will be executed. Those who disobey will be executed." The masked man's eyes were terrifying. After a moment, the masked man suddenly roared, "Retreat!" As the masked man's voice fell, the soldiers suddenly stopped and then retreated like a tide. The masked man glanced coldly at Yi Xian and the others, then turned around and rode away. The army retreated very quickly. When Xiahou Dao and the others saw the army retreating, they also retreated. They knew very well that if it wasn't for the army restraining them, they would immediately become corpses on the streets. In the battlefield, Yi Xian and the others sat paralyzed on the ground. There were corpses all around them, and the air was filled with an extremely unpleasant smell of blood. Yi Xian lay on the ground. At this moment, he had no strength left in his body. He really killed until his hands were weak. Not only him, but Lu Banzwang and the others beside him were also the same. They killed until they had no strength left. At this moment, the 8th floor master appeared in front of Yi Xian and the others. The 8th floor master glanced into the distance. The 9th princess of the Jiang country made a move. Little 9. Yi Xian sat up. She made a move? The 8th floor master nodded. Just half an hour ago, she suddenly sent 70,000 cavalrymen straight towards Pei Xiaohu's army. Pei Xiaohu's main forces are the Black Blade Guards and the Daredevil Battalion. Without these two main forces, the strength of his army is greatly reduced. It is precisely for this reason that the army immediately retreated. Speaking of this, he glanced at Yi Xian and said softly, "She should know that you and the others are restraining the Daredevil Battalion and the Black Blade Guards." However, she dared to send troops when the Jiang country is surrounded by enemies. This courage is still very surprising. Yi Xian said solemnly, "Is there any danger on her side?" The 8th floor master shook his head. "She is a smart person. She will not fight to the death with the Tang Empire now. If I'm not wrong, when the Daredevil Battalion and the Black Blade Guards return, she should immediately withdraw her troops and return to Two Realm City. In fact, she should be helping you this time." Yi Xian's heart was quite complicated. He naturally understood Jiang Jiu's intentions. At this time, the 8th floor master said solemnly, "My drunken immortal building has received information that some people on the Qingzhou martial roll are coming here. In addition, there is also the Great Cloud Empire of the Great Cloud Realm. This empire must not be underestimated. Although they are not as powerful as they were at their peak, their foundation is still there. In addition, the people of the Xueqi Academy and the Dark World from the Central Divine Continent are probably going to enter the Qingzhou province." At this point, his expression became solemn. The matter was really serious. Because he could see that the Xueqi Academy and the Dark World were clearly going to fight to the death with Yi Xian. The two superpowers were almost ready to pay any price. In fact, these two forces had no way out. If Yi Xian rose, he would definitely take revenge, but they couldn't kneel down and admit their mistakes. Although a sword immortal was strong, he was not strong enough to make these two forces give up their dignity and everything to admit their mistakes. As for Yi Xian, if he didn't die now, his future would be limitless with the guidance of a sword immortal. The two forces did not dare to let Yi Xian continue to grow like this. Of course, it was not entirely because of Yi Xian. These two forces also wanted to get back at him. It should be known that the news of the venerables of the Xueqi Academy and the elites of the Dark World being killed had already spread through the entire Qingzhou province. At this moment, Lu Banzwang, who was nearby, suddenly said, "My people will arrive in 2 days at most." The 8th floor master and Yi Xian looked at Lu Banzwang. Lu Banzwang slowly walked into the distance, and among the corpses in the distance, she found Shang Yu's corpse. Yi Xian and the others walked over to Shang Yu's corpse. Lu Banzwang looked at Shang Yu's corpse expressionlessly, and said, "If they want to fight, then let's fight." "Fight." Beside her, Ling Han said viciously, "Fight with them. My cousin will arrive in 2 days at most." "Fight." Everyone's opinion was unanimous. Lu Banzwang turned to look at Yi Xian and asked, "What are your plans?" "Plans." Yi Li and the others all looked at Yi Xian. The 8th floor master also looked at Yi Xian. In truth, he was still a little nervous at this point, because things had really gotten out of hand. Yi Xian was silent for a moment and then said, "Bury Shang Yu first." Everyone nodded. An hour later, Yi Xian and the others buried Shang Yu in a dense forest. In front of the tombstone, Lu Banzwang glanced at the ring in his hand and said, "Rest in peace, leave the rest to us." After saying that, everyone bowed deeply. After leaving the dense forest, Lu Banzwang and the others looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian looked up at the distant sky. "This place is less than 800 meters away from the imperial capital of the Tang Empire. Are you interested in going to the imperial capital to kill some people?" "Go to the imperial capital?" Everyone looked at Yi Xian and did not speak. Chapter 133. The imperial capital of the Tang Empire. An hour later, Yi Xian's group of 12 headed straight for the imperial capital. On the way, Lu Banzwang, who was next to Yi Xian, suddenly said, "Do you want to ask for reinforcements? I know a mercenary from the Central Plains. It's not very expensive." Yi Xian thought for a moment, then nodded, "Okay, go ahead." Lu Banzwang nodded and did not say anything else. In front of Guinan City, watching Yi Xian and the others heading to the imperial capital, the 8th building master sighed slightly. Young people are hot-blooded. In fact, he was trying to persuade Yi Xian and the others to leave the Tang Empire. However, Lu Banzwang and the others were not willing to leave. They were bullied. They naturally had to fight back. This was a group of people who dared to fight and were very vengeful. Especially Yi Xian. He was not an ordinary person who held grudges. The Drunken Immortal Building originally wanted to send someone to the imperial capital with Yi Xian and the others, but Yi Xian refused. For Yi Xian, the Drunken Immortal Building had done enough. Because of the Drunken Immortal Building's help this time, the Drunken Immortal Building had completely given up on all its industries in the Tang Empire. It was really enough. 2 World City. When the Black Blade Guards and the Death Camp returned to defend, Jiang Jiu had already returned to 2 World City with the army. On the city wall, Jiang Jiu was dressed in silver armor. She looked at the horizon in the distance and whispered, "Come back." On a mountain peak, Xiahou Dao and more than a dozen Black Blade Guards were kneeling quietly. Not far in front of Xiahou Dao and the others stood a middle-aged man. The middle-aged man had his hands behind his back, looking ahead. This person was Mu Qingxian, the dean of the Qingzhou province's Karaki Academy. After an unknown amount of time, Mu Qingxian suddenly said, "Get up." Xiahou Dao and the others stood up. Mu Qingxian whispered, "That group of people came from the Central Plains. I made a mistake before. I chose to attack them before finding out their origins, provoking a group of enemies for no reason. If he had known that Lu Banzwang and the others came from the Central Plains, he would not have attacked them. Unfortunately, he had already provoked them. Peace. There was no way to resolve this peacefully." Xiahou Dao said solemnly, "Master, what should we do next?" Mu Qingxian chuckled and said, Wait for someone to come. His current enemies are not only my Karaki Academy and Dark World. I want to see exactly how monstrous he, Yi Xian, can be. I also want to see if the Sword Immortal behind him can protect him in the end." In the vast mountain range, Yi Xian and the others were running wildly. Tang Empire's imperial capital. Yi Xian was expressionless. Beside him were Lu Banzwang and the others. After an unknown amount of time, Yi Xian and the others arrived at the imperial capital of the Tang Empire. But this time, they did not brazenly enter the imperial capital, but quietly sneaked in. Because the imperial capital was not under martial law, Yi Xian and the others easily sneaked into the imperial capital. At a corner of a street, Lu Banzwang suddenly asked, "Where are we going?" Everyone also looked at Yi Xian. Now, Yi Xian and Lu Banzwang were the backbone of this small group. They were also convinced of Yi Xian, because every time they fought, Yi Xian and Lu Banzwang would always rush to the front. Moreover, both of them were the best at fighting. Yi Xian looked up into the distance. Xueqi Academy. Lu Banzwang said solemnly, a powerhouse of the 10,000 law realm. Yi Xian's mouth curled into a grin. Bet that they won't dare to send a powerhouse of the 10,000 law realm. After saying that, he quickly walked into the distance. Lu Banzwang glanced at Yi Xian. Beside her, Yi Li said solemnly, Brother Ye's temper is a bit violent. Lu Banzwang said lightly, good temper. Yi Li. After a while, everyone arrived at the Tang Empire's Xueqi Academy. The Tang Empire's Xueqi Academy was also built on a mountain, but it was still a bit worse than the Zhang Empire's Xueqi Academy. After all, the Zhang Empire's Xueqi Academy had produced someone like Gu Chen. At the foot of the mountain, beside Yi Xian, Yi Li suddenly said, Brother Yi, are we really going to attack this academy? Everyone also looked at Yi Xian. Attack an academy. They had never done such a thing before. Yi Xian nodded. Attack. Yi Li hesitated and then said, How? Yi Xian raised his head to face the mountain. Attack directly. As he said that, the spirit elegant sword suddenly flew out from his body. Immediately afterward, Yi Xian raised his sword and charged towards the mountain. Beside Lu Banzwang, Ling Han was startled, and then said, So direct? Don't you want to make an opening statement? Lu Banzwang glanced at Yi Xian, and in the next moment, she also charged out. Very soon, the 12 of them charged towards the Xueqi Academy. It was a brazen attack. At this moment, an angry shout suddenly rang out from within the Xueqi Academy. Who dares to attack our Xueqi Academy? The leader Yi Xian grinned maliciously. It's your grandfather, Yi Xian me. Yi Xian. The entire Xueqi Academy was shocked. Now, who didn't know Yi Xian's name in Qing Province? Martial Arts Grandmaster. Sword Grandmaster. Most importantly, he had a sword celestial behind him. Very soon, countless elites of the Xueqi Academy blocked in front of Yi Xian. The elder in the lead was just about to speak when Yi Xian suddenly leaped, holding his sword with both hands, and suddenly slashed at the elder. One strike to decide life and death. This sword strike was a combination of battle will and sword will. After seeing the power of Yi Xian's strike, the elder's pupils shrank slightly. His right hand turned into a palm, and in the next moment, he suddenly flipped upwards. Bang! The ground before him was instantly lifted up. However, this didn't stop Yi Xian's strike, and Yi Xian's sword slashed down in a straight line. Bang! The elder was instantly blasted away. However, at the moment he was blasted away, a figure suddenly appeared before him, and the figure raised his leg and directly kicked the elder's head. Bang! The elder's head instantly flew into the air. That figure was Lu Banzwang. When they saw the elder being instantly killed, the students of Xueqi Academy were completely stunned. The elder was the vice dean of Xueqi Academy, a peak divine unity realm expert. He was instantly killed just like that? Yi Xian and the others didn't stop, and they directly charged up the mountain. Just when the students of Xueqi Academy were about to block them, a voice suddenly resounded from the mountain. Stand down! It was the voice of the dean of Xueqi Academy. As soon as the voice resounded, a terrifying pressure directly enveloped Yi Xian and the others. At the same time, a black-robed elder appeared in front of Yi Xian and the others. Yi Xian and the others stopped. A 10,000 Dharma realm expert. This black-robed elder was the dean of Xueqi Academy. The black-robed elder glared at Yi Xian. Yi Xian, do you really think that there's no one in my Xueqi Academy? You. Yi Xian suddenly pointed his sword at the black-robed elder. Hit me! Come on! Lu Banzwang and the others. The black-robed elder clenched his fists, and his expression was terrifyingly gloomy. Hit Yi Xian? He really didn't dare to. How did those 10,000 Dharma realm experts from Qingzhou Xueqi Academy die? How did Jiang Country's Xueqi Academy perish? It was because they bullied Yi Xian. Now, who didn't know that Yi Xian had a sword immortal backing him? At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly turned to Lu Banzwang. Go to Xueqi Academy's treasury. Take everything you can. Kill anyone who blocks your way. Lu Banzwang nodded. After saying that, she led Yi Li and the others straight to Karaki Academy's treasury. Impudent! The black-robed elder suddenly shouted angrily. He glared at Yi Xian. Yi Xian, don't go too far. You! Yi Xian walked to a few meters in front of the black-robed elder. Hit me! Come on, hurry up! The black-robed elder clenched his fists tightly, and his expression was terrifying. Lu Banzwang and the others didn't stop. Some people tried to block him, but they were instantly kicked away by Lu Banzwang. Among them, some Karaki Academy students wanted to block him, but the black-robed elder suddenly shouted angrily, "Stop!" Those Karaki Academy students turned to look at the black-robed elder. The black-robed elder glared at Yi Xian. Yi Xian pointed at himself and said, "Please hit me." Really? Everyone. Lu Banzwang glanced at Yi Xian. How despicable! After saying that, she quickly led Yi Li and the others away. In front of Yi Xian, the black-robed elder's face was a little twisted. Hit. Of course, he wanted to slap Yi Xian to death. Moreover, he was confident that if he attacked, he would be able to kill Yi Xian. However, he didn't dare. He really didn't dare. Because if he attacked, it was very likely that the Sword Immortal would come. At that time, not only would he die, but everyone in Karaki Academy would also die. Just like that, Lu Banzwang and the others swaggered toward Karaki Academy's treasury. During this time, no one dared to block them. Thus, Lu Banzwang and the others smoothly entered Karaki Academy's treasury. When they saw the treasures in the treasury, Yi Li and the others' eyes lit up. Even Lu Banzwang was a little excited. Thus, she took out a large flatbread and took a bite. There was so much. After all, this was the accumulation of Karaki Academy over countless years. After a short moment, Lu Banzwang suddenly said, "Start packing. Take it all away." When they heard that, they started to sweep through the treasury like crazy. Their origins weren't simple, so their spatial rings were naturally the best. Thus, it wasn't difficult to store all these things. After they finished sweeping through the treasury, they headed to Karaki Academy's Technique Pavilion and Martial Skill Pavilion. They didn't let go of any treasures. A dozen people could only be described as bandits. As for Karaki Academy, no one made a move. As long as the Dharma realm didn't make a move, Lu Banzwang and the others were invincible in Karaki Academy. Most importantly, Yi Xian and the others had a Sword Immortal standing behind them. Bullying the weak? Even Azure Prefecture's Karaki Academy and Dark World didn't dare to bully the weak. The black-robed elder's choice was obviously wise. Because under the circumstances that he couldn't make a move, if Karaki Academy wanted to fight Yi Xian and the others, then even if they could win, both sides would suffer heavy losses. It should be said that both sides would be destroyed. Tang Empire's Karaki Academy had been passed down for countless years. He didn't want Karaki Academy to be destroyed in his hands. It was a humiliation. However, when faced with humiliation and destruction, he'd chosen humiliation. At the very least, he could only choose humiliation before the reinforcements from Karaki Academy arrived. It didn't take long for Lu Banzwang and the others to emerge from the treasury. All the students of Karaki Academy had horrifyingly savage expressions on their faces. An extraordinary humiliation. Today was the most humiliating day in the history of Karaki Academy. Lu Banzwang and the others walked over to Yi Xian's side, and Yi Xian nodded slightly. "Let's go." He didn't choose to kill them because if he did, then they would definitely fight to the death. Right at this moment, Yi Li hesitated for a moment before he walked over to the black-robed old man, and then he pointed at himself. "Hit me!" Bang! Yi Li was instantly blasted 300 m away, and then he crashed heavily to the ground. Yi Li spat out a mouthful of blood, and then he gazed at Yi Xian and the others with a slightly dazed expression. Was I wrong? Chapter 134. The method is wrong? Yi Xian was slightly speechless. The old man glanced coldly at Yi Li. "Is there a Sword Immortal behind you as well?" He didn't dare hit Yi Xian because he was afraid he would force that Sword Immortal out. However, it didn't mean that he was easy to bully. However, he didn't dare to kill Yi Li in the end. A Sword Immortal. He was extremely fearful, or it should be said to be terrified. Just like that, Yi Xian and the others swaggered off amidst the furious gazes of the members of Karaki Academy. No one dared to attack them. Unless a myriad of Law's realm expert appeared, then no one amongst the younger generation of the Tang Empire could stop Yi Xian and the others. Even some senior experts at the Divine Union realm couldn't stop them. The old man stared fixedly at them for a long time, and then he shook his head in the end. Li Xuanzong, you've caused great harm to my Karaki Academy. Presently, Karaki Academy and Yi Xian were irreconcilable enemies. Both sides wouldn't let the matter rest. The current situation was naturally caused by Li Xuanzong's Karaki Academy. All those years ago, Yi Xian had wanted to join Karaki Academy. But now, it would be a lie to say that it wasn't a pity. Of course, Karaki Academy only had a single thought in their mind, and it was to eliminate Yi Xian. They had to. Karaki Academy wouldn't allow Yi Xian to continue growing. After a short moment, the black-robed old man turned around and vanished on the spot, and his destination was unknown. As for Karaki Academy, it was in a mess because everything had been plundered by Lu Banzwang and the others. Years of savings had been taken away by Yi Xian and the others just like that. After Yi Xian and the others left Karaki Academy, they arrived at a dense forest within a mountain range. All of them gathered together. Divide the spoils. All of them withdrew the things they obtained from Karaki Academy, and Lu Banzwang glanced at them before he said, "There are a total of 270 million gold coins and around 8 million top-grade spirit stones. There are 3 low-grade earth-rank martial techniques, 1 mid-grade, and 1 high-grade earth-rank martial technique, 36 ordinary spirit stones, 15 top-grade spirit stones, and 1 low-grade light-rank martial technique. As for cultivation techniques, there are only 3 low-grade earth-rank cultivation techniques. As for the rest of the miscellaneous items, I estimate them to be around 20 million gold coins. Other than that." With that said, she waved her right hand, and 8 spirit stones appeared before Yi Xian and the others. Jade-grade spirit stones. Everyone's eyes lit up. This is good stuff. Because this was what they needed the most right now. Lu Banzwang glanced at the crowd and said, "There are only 8. It's not enough. Whoever needs it, take it first. I'll deduct the gold coins." Yi Li and the others exchanged glances. It didn't take long for the 8 jade-grade spiritual stones to be distributed. They were all on the same side, so they naturally wouldn't stand on ceremony. At this time, Lu Banzwang looked at Ling Han, who was not far away. With a tap of her finger, a low-grade light-rank spirit tool flew directly in front of Ling Han. This light-rank spirit tool was a spear, which was just right for Ling Han. Ling Han didn't stand on ceremony and directly accepted it. With this spear, his battle prowess could increase by at least 20 to 30%. In a short while, Lu Banzwang and Yi Xian distributed all the items. At this moment, Yi Xian already had 320 million gold coins and about 1 million top-grade spirit stones. Apart from that, he also had 3 low-grade earth-level martial arts techniques, 1 mid-grade earth-level manual, 2 low-grade earth-level manuals, and top-grade spiritual weapons. Apart from those powerful crossbows from before, there were 13 top-grade spiritual weapons. He also got some miscellaneous items. These miscellaneous items might not be of much use to him, but for the current Kanglin Academy, they are very, very useful. The harvest was huge. It could be said that this trip to Karaki Academy had earned them a lot. Actually, it wasn't a lot for each of them, because each of them needed a huge amount of cultivation resources. Cultivation was burning money, especially since they all wanted to change into light-rank equipment, which was not something that could be bought with tens of millions of gold coins. Therefore, everyone was quite envious of Ling Han. At this time, everyone looked at Yi Xian. Lu Banzwang also looked at Yi Xian. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian said, "Our whereabouts have been exposed. Now, every place in the Imperial City must be heavily guarded, especially the Imperial Palace of the Tang Empire. We can't go there." At this point he slightly paused, and then said, "Although we can't go to the Imperial Palace, there must be a lot of things in the Imperial City. We can borrow some money from them." Lu Banzwang took out a large flatbread and took a bite, then said, "Do you want to return it?" Yi Xian said calmly, "Do I look like the kind of person who borrows money and doesn't return it?" Lu Banzwang looked at Yi Xian and said seriously, "It's hard to say." Yi Xian. Haha, everyone laughed. Soon, Yi Xian and the others left the jungle. After a quarter of an hour, the the Tang Empire's imperial city was in chaos. A group of people went to the mansions of the nobles and families. When they came out, the mansions of the nobles and families were almost looted clean. Bandit Yi Xian. Soon, the names of Yi Xian and the others spread throughout the Tang Empire's imperial city. Anger. Countless people in the Tang Empire were angry. Yi Xian and the others looted the Tang Empire's nobles and families like crazy, which was tantamount to slapping the Tang Empire's face. However, no one dared to stop Yi Xian and the others. Even the Tang Empire's imperial palace did not move at this moment, and all the soldiers on the street were found. Yi Xian and the others were invincible under the 10,000 law realm. Unless tens of thousands of soldiers were mobilized to encircle and suppress them, there was no way to deal with them. And in the imperial capital, it was difficult for the army to display its power. Moreover, the Tang Empire did not want to use the lives of ordinary soldiers to block Yi Xian and the others, because it was too much of a loss. Tang Empire's imperial palace. At this time, there were tens of thousands of soldiers gathered at the entrance of the imperial palace, including 3,000 elite imperial guards. The palace was also full of soldiers. Alert! The entire imperial palace was on high alert. In a certain hall of the imperial palace, a middle-aged man was sitting on the dragon throne. In front of him, there was a large pile of memorials. This person was the king of the Tang Empire, Tang Nancy. Not far from the king of the Tang Empire stood an old man. The old man was wearing a wide black robe, and behind him, there were two scimitars. And not far in front of him, sat a white-haired old man. After a while, Tang Nancy closed the memorials in his hand and looked at the white-haired old man in front of him. "Elder, what do you think?" The white-haired old man pondered slightly, then said solemnly, "Those 12 people are invincible under the 10,000 law realm. We must wait for the central continent's people to come. Before that, endure. Endure." Tang Nancy was expressionless. "This is a national humiliation." The white-haired elder shook his head. "Your Majesty, this war should not have started in the first place. The Xueqi Academy and the Dark World merely want to make use of our Tang Empire. Even though it is a huge advantage for our Tang Empire with their help, their target is that Yi Xian, and this person has a sword immortal behind him. We really should not get involved in the grudge between them." Tang Nancy chuckled. "Elder, does the Tang Empire have the capital to reject the Xueqi Academy and the Dark World?" The elder was silent. Reject the Xueqi Academy? Absolutely not. The influence of the Qingzhou province's Xueqi Academy is too great. If the Tang Empire does not cooperate, their fate will be miserable. Tang Nancy said softly. "In fact, this is also an opportunity for the Tang Empire. If we can use their power to get rid of the state of Zhang, the territory of the Tang Empire will more than double. At that time, with the support of the Xueqi Academy and the Dark World, the development of the Tang Empire will not be weaker than the Ning Empire." As he spoke, he slowly closed his eyes. There is danger, but it is also an opportunity. The elder was silent for a long time, and then said, "Let's see if the Xueqi Academy and the Dark World can suppress that Yi Xian." Yi Xian. Tang Nancy slowly clenched his right hand. The geniuses of the Tang Empire. None of them can compare to this person. As he spoke, he looked at the elder. "Pass down my order. Close the city gates. The feathered arrow guards and the Imperial Army are on standby. When the people of the Xueqi Academy and the Central Divine Continent arrive, immediately kill this person." The elder said solemnly, "I hope the people who come can suppress this group of bandits." In the imperial capital, on a street, Yi Xian and the others sat on the ground. "Go to the imperial palace?" Ling Han suddenly said excitedly. "There must be a lot of treasures in there." The imperial palace. The corner of Yi Xian's mouth twitched slightly. This guy is addicted to robbing. Lu Banzwang glanced at Ling Han. In the imperial palace, there are at least 20,000 archers and tens of thousands of elite guards. If you can deal with them, we will go. Ling Han. Yi Xian nodded. Although I also want to go to the imperial palace, they won't compromise with us. We can't defeat tens of thousands of soldiers. Can't defeat. Although he liked fighting and wanted to destroy the Tang Empire, he knew very well that with their current strength, attacking the imperial palace of the Tang Empire was practically a fool's dream. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly took out a pitch-black sound transmission stone. The sound transmission stone trembled slightly, And then a voice was transmitted to Yi Xian's mind. Everyone looked at Yi Xian, not saying anything. After a moment, the corner of Yi Xian's mouth twitched slightly. The drunken immortal gave me information. In a mountain 100 miles away from here, there is a gold mine of the Tang Empire. There are only about 2,000 soldiers there. Are you all interested? Yi Li and the others hurriedly nodded. Of course they were interested. Yi Xian nodded. We have to finish this as soon as possible. Let's go. With that, the group of people disappeared on the spot. In a mountain, Yi Xian and the others rode on a black wolf and sprinted. In a short while, Yi Xian and the others arrived at the location of the gold mine. When the soldiers saw Yi Xian and the others, their expressions changed greatly. However, not a single soldier retreated. 2,000 soldiers were ready for battle, and all of them were unafraid of death. Yi Xian suddenly jumped off the black wolf. He opened his right hand, and the big black sword appeared in his hand. At the same time, the power of the earth instantly gathered around his body. Yi Xian wrapped the chain on his big black sword tightly around his arm. Then, he dragged the big black sword with his right hand and rushed towards the group of soldiers. His body emitted a monstrous battle intent and sword intent. The big black sword was propped on the ground, and everywhere it passed, the ground began to crack inch by inch. In the distance, in front of the 2,000 soldiers, a middle-aged general stabbed his long spear into the ground and roared, "Fight to the death! Fight to the death!" The 2,000 soldiers roared in unison, their long spears madly striking the ground, their momentum terrifying. It didn't take long for the 8 jade-grade spiritual stones to be distributed. Since they were on the same side, there was no need to stand on ceremony. At this time, Lu Banzwang looked at Ling Han, who was not far away. With a tap of her finger, a low-grade light-rank spirit tool flew directly in front of Ling Han. This light-rank spirit tool was a spear, which was just right for Ling Han. Ling Han accepted it without hesitation. With this spear, his battle prowess could increase by at least 20 to 30%. In a short while, Lu Banzwang and Yi Xian divided all the items. At this moment, Yi Xian already had 320 million gold coins and about 1 million top-grade spirit stones. Apart from that, he also had 3 low-grade earth-level martial arts techniques, 1 mid-grade earth-level manual, 2 low-grade earth-level manuals, and top-grade spiritual weapons. Apart from those powerful crossbows from before, there were 13 top-grade spiritual weapons. He also got some miscellaneous items. These miscellaneous items might not be of much use to him, but for the current Kanglin Academy, they are very, very useful. The harvest was huge. It could be said that this trip to Xueqi Academy had earned them a lot. Actually, for them, it wasn't a lot, because each of them needed a huge amount of cultivation resources. Cultivation was burning money, especially since they all wanted to change into light-rank equipment, which was not something that could be bought with tens of millions. Therefore, everyone was quite envious of Ling Han. At this time, everyone looked at Yi Xian. Lu Banzwang also looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian was silent for a moment. Our whereabouts have been exposed. Now, every place in the Imperial City must be heavily guarded, especially the Imperial Palace of the Tang Empire. We can't go there. At this point he slightly paused, and then said, although we can't go to the Imperial Palace, there must be a lot of things in the Imperial City. Let's go to them and borrow some money. Lu Banzwang took out a big flatbread and took a bite, then said, do you want to return it? Yi Xian said indifferently, am I the kind of person who borrows money and doesn't return it? Lu Banzwang glanced at Yi Xian and said seriously, it's hard to say. Yi Xian. Haha. Everyone laughed out loud. Soon, Yi Xian and the others left the jungle. After a quarter of an hour, the Tang Empire's imperial city was in chaos. A group of people went to the mansions of the nobles and families. When they came out, the mansions of the nobles and families were almost ransacked. Bandit Yi Xian. Soon, the names of Yi Xian and the others spread throughout the Tang Empire's imperial city. Anger. Countless people in the Tang Empire were angry. Yi Xian and the others looted the Tang Empire's nobles and families, which was tantamount to slapping the Tang Empire's face. However, no one dared to stop Yi Xian and the others. Even the imperial palace of the Tang Empire did not move at this moment, and all the soldiers on the street were found. Yi Xian and the others were invincible under the 10,000 law realm. Unless tens of thousands of soldiers were mobilized to encircle and suppress them, there was no way to deal with them. And in the imperial capital, it was difficult for the army to display its full potential. Moreover, the Tang Empire did not want to use the lives of ordinary soldiers to block Yi Xian and the others, because it was too much of a loss. Imperial Palace of the Tang Empire. At this time, tens of thousands of soldiers had gathered at the entrance of the Imperial Palace, including 3,000 elite Imperial Guards. The palace was also filled with soldiers. Alert! The entire Imperial Palace was on high alert. In a certain hall of the Imperial Palace, a middle-aged man was sitting on the dragon throne. In front of him, there was a large pile of memorials. This person was the king of the Tang Empire, Tang Nancy. Not far from the king of the Tang Empire stood an old man. The old man was wearing a large black robe, and behind him, there were 2 scimitars. And not far in front of him sat a white-haired old man. After a while, Tang Nancy closed the memorials in his hand and looked at the white-haired old man in front of him. "Elder, what do you think?" The white-haired old man pondered slightly, then said solemnly, "Those 12 people are invincible under the 10,000 law realm. We must wait for the central continent's people to come. Before that, endure." Endure. Tang Nancy was expressionless. This is a national humiliation. The white-haired elder shook his head. "Your Majesty, this war should not have started in the first place. The Xueqi Academy and the Dark World merely wanted to make use of our Tang Empire. Although it is a huge advantage for our Tang Empire with their help, their target is that Yi Xian, and this person has a sword immortal behind him. We really should not get involved in their grudges." Tang Nancy chuckled. "Elder, does the Tang Empire have the capital to refuse the Xueqi Academy and the Dark World?" The elder was silent. Refuse the Xueqi Academy? No way. The influence of the Qingzhou province's Xueqi Academy is too great. If the Tang Empire does not cooperate, their fate will be miserable. Tang Nancy said softly. "In fact, this is also an opportunity for the Tang Empire. If we can use their power to get rid of the state of Zhang, the territory of the Tang Empire will more than double. At that time, with the support of the Xueqi Academy and the Dark World, the development of the Tang Empire will not be weaker than the Ning Empire." Saying so, he slowly closed his eyes. There is danger, but it is also an opportunity. The elder was silent for a long time, and then said, "Let's see if the Xueqi Academy and the Dark World can suppress that Yi Xian." Yi Xian. Tang Nancy slowly clenched his right hand. None of the geniuses of the Tang Empire can compare to this person. Saying so, he looked at the elder. "Pass down my order, close the city gates, and have the feathered arrow guards and the Imperial Army be on standby. When the people of the Xueqi Academy and the Central Divine Continent arrive, immediately kill this person." The elder said solemnly, "I hope the people who come can suppress this group of bandits." In the imperial capital, in a street, Yi Xian and the others sat on the ground. "To the Imperial Palace?" Ling Han suddenly said excitedly. "There must be a lot of treasures there." The Imperial Palace. Yi Xian's lips twitched slightly. This guy was addicted to robbing. Lu Banzwang glanced at Ling Han. "There are at least 20,000 archers in the Imperial Palace, and tens of thousands of elite guards. If you can deal with them, we will go." "Ling Han." Yi Xian nodded. "Although I also want to go to the Imperial Palace, they won't compromise with us. We can't defeat tens of thousands of soldiers." Can't defeat. Although he liked to fight, and also wanted to destroy the Tang Empire, he knew very well that with their current strength, attacking the Imperial Palace of the Tang Empire was practically a fool's dream. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly took out a pitch-black sound transmission stone. The sound transmission stone trembled slightly, and then a voice was transmitted to Yi Xian's mind. Everyone looked at Yi Xian, and did not speak. After a moment, Yi Xian's lips twitched slightly. "The drunken immortal brothel gave me information that there is a gold mine of the Tang Empire in a mountain 100 miles away from here. There are only 2,000 soldiers there. Are you all interested?" Yi Li and the others hurriedly nodded. Of course they were interested. Yi Xian nodded. "We have to finish this as soon as possible. Let's go." As soon as he finished speaking, the group disappeared on the spot. In a mountain, Yi Xian and the others rode on a black wolf, and in a short while, Yi Xian and the others arrived at the location of the gold mine. When the soldiers guarding there saw Yi Xian and the others, their expressions changed greatly, but not a single soldier retreated. 2,000 soldiers were ready for battle, and all of them were unafraid of death. Yi Xian suddenly jumped off the black wolf. He opened his right hand, and the big black sword appeared in his hand. At the same time, the power of the earth instantly gathered around his body. Yi Xian tightly wrapped the chain on his big black sword around his arm. Then, he dragged the big black sword with his right hand and rushed towards the group of soldiers. His body emitted a monstrous battle intent and sword intent. The big black sword was propped on the ground, and everywhere it passed, the ground began to crack inch by inch. In the distance, in front of the 2,000 soldiers, a middle-aged general suddenly stabbed his spear into the ground and roared, "Fight to the death! Fight to the death!" The 2,000 soldiers roared in unison, their spears madly striking the ground, their momentum terrifying. Chapter 136. Bandit Army. Hearing Yi Xian's words, everyone's expressions turned strange. Bandits? Lu Banzwang also looked at Yi Xian for a long time. Yi Xian smiled. Is the name not nice? Everyone could not help but look at Yi Xian. Was the name nice? Bandit Army. It felt a little strange. Lu Banzwang suddenly said, "Then it's Bandit Army." Since Lu Banzwang had no objections, the name could be said to be set. Lu Banzwang glanced at Yi Xian without saying anything. No one knew what he was thinking. Although they were not very familiar with Yi Xian, they all trusted him. Similarly, Yi Xian also trusted Lu Banzwang and the others. After all, they had experienced several life-and-death battles together. At this moment, the voice transmission stone in Yi Xian's bosom suddenly vibrated, and a voice came from it. "Be careful! Be careful!" Yi Xian frowned. Just as he was about to reply, a man approached slowly from among the heavy cavalries in the distance. The man was in his 20s and wore black clothes. His hair was white like snowflakes, and he held a long sword with his right hand behind his back. The sword was about 3 feet long and 2 fingers wide, and it emitted a faint glow. Swordsman. When he saw the man in black, Xiahou Dao's eyes narrowed slightly, and there was a trace of seriousness in his eyes. Lu Xianqian. Qingzhou martial roll ranked 4th. At the same time, he was also a Sword Dao Grandmaster. Together with Yi Xian, there were 2 Sword Dao Grandmasters present. Lu Xianqian slowly walked toward Yi Xian and the others, but at this moment, Xiahou Dao suddenly said, "You can't kill those 12 people alone." Lu Xianqian glanced at Xiahou Dao. "So you're waiting for a group fight?" Xiahou Dao frowned. At this moment, Lu Xianqian said again, "Instead of being a human, you chose to be a dog." With that, he turned and walked toward Yi Xian and the others. Behind him, Xiahou Dao's expression was extremely ugly. Lu Xianqian walked in front of Yi Xian and the rest, his gaze landing on Yi Xian. Battle. 1-on-1. Yi Xian faced Lu Xianqian. "It seems like not all of your people are here yet." Lu Xianqian stared straight at Yi Xian. "I'm only here to fight you." Yi Xian nodded his head and hopped off the black wolf before walking towards Lu Xianqian. Right at this moment, Lu Xianqian suddenly disappeared on the spot. At the same time, a spot of sword light appeared on Yi Xian's forehead. This wisp of sword light came very quickly and silently. However, this wisp of sword light stopped half an inch away from Yi Xian's forehead. Because Yi Xian's sword moved. Boom! Yi Xian and Lu Xianqian suddenly returned to their original positions. The 2 of them were separated by over 60 feet, and the ground between them was covered in cracks like a giant spiderweb. After a moment of silence, Lu Xianqian suddenly walked slowly toward Yi Xian with his sword in hand. With every step he took, the sword in his hand would tremble violently. At the same time, the sword intent and sword aura emanating from his body would strengthen. When he was still 30 feet away from Yi Xian, the sword aura and sword intent emanating from his body had already reached an unimaginable level. This sword intent and sword aura caused the ground within 50 feet of him and Yi Xian to crack inch by inch. This sword aura and sword aura had already surpassed the Nether Passage realm and reached the Divine Unity realm. Moreover, this sword aura and sword aura were actually still strengthening. The expressions of Yi Li and the others turned solemn when they saw this. A Grandmaster of the Sword. This Lu Xianqian before them was a true grandmaster of the sword, the kind that was not exaggerated at all. At this moment, they had a different view of Azure Province. Although Azure Province was inferior to the divine central continent, it did not mean that there were no geniuses and monsters here. Yi Li and the others looked at Yi Xian with a hint of worry in their eyes. Yi Xian was expressionless, and the spirit gray sword in his hand was also extremely calm, without any fluctuations. At this time, Lu Xianqian was less than 20 feet away from Yi Xian. The sword aura and sword intent emanating from Lu Xuanqian's body had already reached an unimaginable level. After a moment of silence, Lu Xianqian suddenly raised his sword and stabbed. This sword had already surpassed the divine unity realm, but it had not reached the myriad dharma realm either. It should be said that this sword was in between the two. Yi Xian attacked. Although he cultivated the invincible sword physique, the power of this sword had already exceeded the limits of the spirit grace sword. He could only receive it head-on. He wanted to receive it head-on because this sword was worthy of his respect. Under everyone's gaze, Yi Xian attacked. One sword to decide life and death. Yi Xian did not hold back and used his full strength right from the get-go. His sword was completely different from Lu Xuanqian's. If Lu Xuanqian's sword was a gradual accumulation of power to the limit before erupting, then Yi Xian's sword was a sudden volcanic eruption. The two swords clashed head-on in the most direct and violent way. Boom! The moment the two of them clashed, countless sword chi exploded between them like a violent storm. These sword chi instantly cut the ground in front of them and around them into countless pieces. Lu Xuanqian's body was covered in sword wounds, and his entire body was dyed red with blood. Especially his right arm, which was almost severed from the root by the sword chi. On the other hand, although Yi Xian had injuries all over his body, they were pitifully few. He was almost completely unscathed. His physical body had forcefully withstood the sword chi that had been emitted. In this battle, Yi Xian had completely gained the upper hand. Lu Xianqian looked up at Yi Xian, and the next moment, Yi Xian was already in front of him. At the same time, a sword was pressed against his neck. Lu Xianqian looked at Yi Xian without a hint of fear in his eyes. "I've lost." With that, he slowly closed his eyes. However, Yi Xian did not make a move. Instead, he put away his sword and walked toward Lu Banzwang and the rest. Lu Xianqian opened his eyes and looked at Yi Xian. "Why?" Yi Xian stopped in his tracks. "You could have chosen to gang up on me, but you didn't. Instead, you chose to fight one-on-one. Since it's one-on-one, let's stop here." "Stop here." By the time Yi Xian finished speaking, he had already returned to He Lang's back. From afar, Lu Xianqian looked at Yi Xian for a long time. In the end, an old man suddenly appeared in front of Lu Xianqian. A Dharma realm cultivator. The old man cupped his fists at Yi Xian. "Thank you for showing mercy. The Lu family will remember this favor." With that, he hesitated for a moment before pointing his finger. 10 white jade bottles appeared in front of Yi Xian. "Huh!" Yi Xian was a little confused. The old man said, "There are 10 supreme-grade golden soar pills in each jade bottle. Consider it a token of our gratitude." Golden soar pills. Hearing that, Yi Xian was delighted. What they needed the most now was this kind of healing pill. Especially. Yi Xian pointed his finger, and the 10 white jade bottles landed in front of Yi Li and the rest. However, Yi Xian and Lu Banzwang did not have any. Yi Xian faced the old man. "That. Senior, look at this." The old man's mouth twitched. With a point of his finger, 2 white jade bottles appeared in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian was a little hesitant. "How can I accept this?" Although he said that, he had already put away the 2 white jade bottles. The old man shook his head and smiled. This Yi Xian was a little different from the rumors. Without thinking too much, he cupped his fists at Yi Xian and turned to leave with Lu Xianqian. At this time, Lu Xianqian suddenly looked at Yi Xian. "I owe you a life." With that, he turned and disappeared with the old man. With Lu Xuanqian's departure, the scene became quiet again. The Tang Kingdom soldiers still did not make a move. Yi Xian and the others did not make a move either. Instead, everyone took a golden soar pill. For them, they had to maintain a state of fighting strength at all times. Neither side made a move. They were waiting for help. Beside Yi Xian, Ling Han suddenly said, "Brother Yi, big sister, What if their people arrive first? Arrive first. Hearing that, everyone's expression changed. If the Tang Kingdom's reinforcements arrived first, then it would be extremely bad for them. The situation would undoubtedly become extremely terrible. It should be said that it was a desperate situation. Lu Banzwang remained expressionless and did not speak. Yi Xian smiled. What else can I do? Of course they would do it. How about we surrender? Surrender? Everyone burst into laughter. As Yi Xian had said, they had no choice but to do it. Thinking of this, everyone got over it. Just do it. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly rode the wolf toward the group of heavy armored cavalrymen. Seeing this scene, the group of Tang Empire's heavy cavalry immediately became alert, and the surrounding archers all pulled their bows and arrows as if they were facing a formidable enemy. Yi Xian ignored the heavy cavalry and arrived in front of Xiahou Dao and the black-armored men. Yi Xian pointed at Xiahou Dao. Come out and fight. Come out and fight one-on-one. Everyone looked at Xiahou Dao. Xiahou Dao stared fixedly at Yi Xian without saying a word. When he saw Xiahou Dao remain silent, Yi Xian gave Xiahou Dao a thumbs up, and then he turned it down. Coward! With that, he turned and left. Meanwhile, Xiahou Dao suddenly walked out, and he walked towards Yi Xian with his saber in hand. Yi Xian stopped. Right at this moment, a middle-aged man suddenly appeared in front of Xiahou Dao. Mu Qingxian. Mu Qingxian glanced at Xiahou Dao. Go back. Xiahou Dao said in a low voice. Master should know what it means to retreat. He would definitely be wary of the heart demon if he retreated. Mu Qingxian was silent for a moment, and then he said, Then admit defeat. Admit defeat. If he admitted defeat, then it wouldn't leave any grudges in his heart. Xiahou Dao looked at Mu Qingxian. I'm not convinced. There was a trace of disappointment in Mu Qingxian's eyes. If you don't know yourself, then how can you break through? With that, he turned and vanished on the spot. Xiahou Dao held his saber tightly in his right hand, and his face was gloomy. As for Yi Xian, he had already returned to the wolf's back. And at this moment, Xiahou Dao suddenly looked up at Yi Xian. I admit defeat. Admit defeat. As soon as he finished speaking, the saber in Xiahou Dao's hand trembled violently. At the same time, his body suddenly emanated an extremely powerful aura. He was going to break through. At this moment, Mu Qingxian suddenly appeared in front of Xiahou Dao. He glanced at Xiahou Dao, and besides praise, there was a trace of gratification in his eyes. Xiahou Dao looked up at Mu Qingxian. Why? Mu Qingxian smiled. It's very important to know yourself clearly. Go back to the academy. Xiahou Dao glanced at Yi Xian, wanting to say something but hesitating. Mu Qingxian shook his head. Someone will deal with this matter. Go. Xiahou Dao nodded, and then he turned and left. After Xiahou Dao left, Mu Qingxian turned to look at Yi Xian. Are you ready? Yi Xian grinned. Bring it on. Mu Qingxian nodded. In the next moment, his right hand pressed down lightly, and a thick book suddenly flew out from his palm. The book expanded explosively with the wind, and in an instant, it was over 100 meters tall and spanned across the horizon. After a moment of silence, the thick book suddenly flipped open, and then a long staircase made of light spread out from the book, reaching all the way to the ground. After a breath of time, 20 people riding on flaming horses swooped down. All of them were at the divine combination realm. Not only that, the flaming horses were actually all at the Nether Passage realm. Chapter 137. Dao Soldiers. Yi Xian turned to face Ling Han. Dao soldiers, are they very powerful? Ling Han smiled bitterly. Very powerful, very powerful. At this point, he raised his head to look at the 20 people charging over from the nearby horizon. In the divine central continent, the so-called Dao soldiers are the elites among the elites of a force. And these Dao soldiers are prepared for group battles, and are also responsible for dealing with some shady matters. And these people are all 1 in a million, truly 1 in a million. Yi Xian nodded slightly. He raised his head to face the 20 Dao soldiers that were charging over. Dao soldiers. He could already feel the terror of these Dao soldiers. All of them were in the divine combination tier, And they were the kind of divine combination tier that had not been exaggerated. Not only that, but he could also feel a sharp killing intent from these Dao soldiers. They were veterans of hundreds of battles. These people had not been nurtured, but had been killed. They were really powerful. Xueqi Academy had come to put their lives on the line this time. Yi Xian suddenly jumped off the black wolf and walked towards the 20 people. Lu Banzwang put away the large flatbread and also jumped down. She followed beside Yi Xian just like that. Ling Han and the others also followed after him. The 12 people walked towards the 20 people just like that. There was not the slightest hint of fear in the eyes of the 12 people. Yi Xian, who was in the lead, was expressionless. In his hand, he held a massive black sword, and the power of the earth had already gathered in his body. The large black sword was propped on the ground, and everywhere he passed, the ground cracked inch by inch. Lu Banzwang's lily-white hands slowly clenched, and her whole person actually became slightly illusory. Just when there was still a distance of 30 meters between the two sides, Yi Xian suddenly leaped up. The large black sword trembled violently, and a sword cry resounded through the horizon. And in front of them, a Dao soldier from Xueqi Academy suddenly leaped into the air on a flaming horse, charging towards Yi Xian. In his hand was a black spear. Yi Xian's sword descended. The Dao soldier stabbed out with his spear. Boom! As soon as the spear and sword came into contact, there was a thunderous explosion. The spear and sword trembled violently. In the blink of an eye, the Dao soldier fell from the sky along with his horse. However, Yi Xian's sword did not stop. Instead, it slashed down in a straight line. If the sword fell, it could split the ground. At that moment, a Dao soldier suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian, thrusting his spear out like a bolt of lightning. Boom! Yi Xian was forcibly blocked by this spear. But at this moment, an afterimage suddenly crashed into the Dao soldier, and the latter was instantly sent flying. It was Lu Banzwang. Lu Banzwang glanced at Yi Xian. To be the big brother, you have to fight at least 5 people. 5. Yi Xian grinned. You call me big brother too? Lu Banzwang raised a finger. Fight 10 of them. Haha. Yi Xian suddenly threw his head back and laughed maniacally. Then he laughed and said, then fight 10 of them. As soon as he said that, he suddenly charged out. In an instant, battle will and sword essence swept out from his body. When the battle will and sword essence appeared, they instantly merged. In an instant, the big black sword in Yi Xian's hand trembled violently and a dazzling sword radiance burst out. Yi Xian leaped and slashed at a group of Xueqi College Dao soldiers not far away. One slash to determine life and death. This slash not only contained battle will and sword essence, but also the power of earth. Not far away, the 7 or 8 Dao soldiers all turned pale when they saw Yi Xian's sword attack. The 8 of them suddenly gathered together and stood in a row. Then, the 8 of them thrust their spears at the same time, one after another. In the end, the power of each thrust gathered into the long spear of the leading soldier like a tide. The 8 of them worked together. The power of the spear instantly shattered the air within a radius of hundreds of feet. At that moment, Yi Xian's sword arrived and slashed at the spear. Boom! The leading spear instantly shattered while the 8 of them retreated hundreds of feet away. When the 8 of them stopped, a trace of blood flowed out from the corner of their mouths. As for Yi Xian, he returned to his original position. There was still a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. 1 against 8. In the distance, Mu Qingxian looked at Yi Xian. His expression was calm and there was no ripple in his eyes. However, his heart was in turmoil. Every Dao soldier from Xueqi College was the elite among the elites. They were all picked out from tens of thousands of miles. However, Yi Xian could actually fight 1 against 8. What kind of monstrous genius was this? Making an enemy out of Xueqi College was definitely the most unwise decision they had made in the past 100 years. However, at this point, there was no turning back. Bow down to Yi Xian and his disciple? Xueqi College had already lost so many experts. How could they bow down now? If they bowed down, Xueqi College's prestige would definitely fall to the lowest point. They couldn't lower their heads. Fight! Mu Qingxian slowly closed his eyes. Then, he lightly tapped his right index finger. In the distance, several ghostly shadows quietly appeared in the midst of the battle. Almost at the same time, Lu Banzwang suddenly appeared in front of those ghostly shadows. Her right hand turned into a palm and slammed it down on the ground. Boom! In an instant, the ground cracked. A powerful force instantly forced those ghostly shadows to retreat. Meanwhile, Yi Li and the others approached Lu Banzwang and Yi Xian. Assassins! Yi Li and the others were on guard. They weren't really afraid of the Dao soldiers. However, these assassins were really annoying because they appeared and disappeared mysteriously. If they weren't careful, they could lose their heads. Beside Lu Banzwang, Ling Han wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and said in a low voice, "Those people shouldn't be Dao soldiers from the Dark Realm. The Dao soldiers from the Dark Realm either haven't arrived yet or are waiting in the dark." Yi Xian turned to Lu Banzwang. "Follow them and block those assassins. I'll do the main thing." After saying so, he raised the large black sword and charged towards the Dao soldiers from Xueqi Academy. Beside Lu Banzwang, Ling Han said in a low voice, "Big sister, go and help brother Yi. We'll be careful ourselves." Lu Banzwang glanced at Yi Xian, who wasn't far away. She was just about to make a move when Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes. Chi chi! Two flashes of sword light shot out like two balls of lightning. In front of Yi Xian, the two Dao soldiers from Xueqi Academy were instantly sent flying several dozen meters away. They had just stopped when Yi Xian raised the large black sword and slashed down above their heads. However, it was at this moment that 5 or 6 Dao soldiers suddenly appeared in front of him. Immediately after, 5 spears stabbed out at the same time, each spear aimed directly at Yi Xian's vital points. However, Yi Xian didn't dodge, and allowed the 5 spears to stab at his vital points. However, none of the 5 spears pierced into Yi Xian's body. Armor of Earth. At this moment, Yi Xian's clothes were covered with a layer of golden soft armor, and this layer of golden soft armor blocked the spears. When they discovered that the spears were blocked, the expressions of the 5 Dao soldiers changed drastically. The next moment, a flying sword instantly sliced off the head of one of the Dao soldiers. Blood spurted out. The other 4 Dao soldiers instantly retreated several dozen meters. The 4 of them looked at Yi Xian, their expressions filled with fear. Yi Xian stood where he was, expressionless. Actually, the golden soft armor under his clothes was already severely deformed, and his body was also damaged. With his current strength, he could at most use 30% of the power of the Dao Law. However, this 30% power was not enough for his armor of the Great Earth to completely withstand the full force attack of the God Unity stage experts. Moreover, it was the full force attack of 5 people. It was already very abnormal for his armor of the Great Earth to be able to withstand the majority of the attack. In the distance, the expressions of those Dao soldiers were extremely grave because they hadn't thought that Yi Xian would actually be able to block the full attack of the 5 of them. Furthermore, he had even killed one of them. Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly disappeared from where he was. The expressions of those Dao soldiers changed slightly, but they didn't retreat. Instead, they charged towards Yi Xian. Yi Xian had already put away the large black sword, and in his hand was the Spirit Elegant sword. The large black sword was powerful enough, but it wasn't agile enough. With the Spirit Elegant sword in hand, Yi Xian's whole person became agile. He continuously shuttled back and forth between those 6 or 7 Dao soldiers, and waves of sword light shot out. For a moment, he and that group of Dao soldiers couldn't do anything to each other. And on the other side, Lu Banzwang and the others also began to battle with the remaining Dao soldiers. Lu Banzwang didn't make a move, and was instead guarding against those assassins in the dark. Apart from Yi Xian, only she could block those assassins from the Dark Realm. Thus, she couldn't make a move. She had to stop those assassins. Otherwise, Ling Han and the others would be in great danger. On the battlefield, 12 people were battling 19 people. For a moment, it actually became a stalemate. And on the other side, in the midst of an endless mountain range, a group of eagles flew over the mountain range. Each eagle was at least 30 meters wide. These eagles were all in the ethereal opening tier. The eagle in the lead was even larger, at least 60 meters long. Its eyes were as sharp as knives, and when it flapped its wings, it would bring about an extremely powerful airflow. On the back of the eagle stood a coarse man. The man wasn't old, only about 20 years old, but he had a full beard. The coarse man suddenly turned around and roared angrily, "Did you not eat? All of you, King, hurry up. After saying this, he turned around and looked into the distance. In a fierce voice he said, "Kuraki Academy, Dark Realm, if anything happens to my sister, I, Lu Kuang, will destroy you all." In the midst of a mountain range, a man rode a giant wolf. The giant wolf was very large, at least twice the size of an ordinary cow. At this moment, the giant wolf was running wildly through the mountain range. Everywhere it passed, it crushed everything. The rugged mountain path was like flat ground to it. On the back of the wolf, the man glared at the end and said angrily, "F***CK, Ling Han, you're trash. You can't even win a fight. You're a disgrace to our Ling clan. If I see you again, I'll beat you to death." On the surface of a river, a girl in green was crossing the vast river surface as if she was walking on flat ground. The girl in green raised her head and looked into the distance. An evil smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. "Baby Lu, this time you'll have to listen to me. Otherwise, the monsters on the monster list will pay at least 100 million gold coins each time they make a move, hee hee." On the other side, Yi Xian and the others were still fighting. Not far away, Mu Qingxian looked at Yi Xian and the others for a long time. In the end, he suddenly raised his right hand and then lightly dropped it. On the side, the 1,000 Tang Empire's heavy cavalry suddenly rushed towards Yi Xian and the others. At the same time, more than 30 divine combination realm experts appeared in the surroundings. Apart from that, there were also some ghostly figures around Yi Xian and the others. Ha ha! At this moment, a loud laughter suddenly came from the other side. "Who is Yi Xian?" "I, Wu Yi, am here to borrow your head." "Wu Yi, third on the martial roll." Mu Qingxian smiled. Apart from that, some people suddenly rushed over from all directions. These people were all here for the bounty. Before, they didn't dare to make a move. Now that they saw Kuraki Academy start an all-out attack, they naturally didn't have any scruples and attacked one after another. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian's expression instantly turned ferocious. He suddenly turned to Lu Banzwang and the others. "Protect me for 15 minutes. After 15 minutes, I'll be invincible." As his voice fell, he suddenly took out the big black sword. The next moment, he suddenly stabbed the big black sword into his body. In an instant, the big black sword directly turned into an endless amount of energy that surged into his body. At this moment, his aura skyrocketed. Not only his aura, but even the spirit elegant sword also trembled violently at this moment. The aura it emitted also rose steadily. "Protect Brother Yi." Ling Han roared angrily. Soon, the 11 of them surrounded Yi Xian. Chapter 138. In the middle of Ling Han and the others, Yi Xian's aura skyrocketed. Inside his body, the spirit elegant sword was also trembling violently, crazily devouring the energy from the big black sword. Devouring the big black sword. At this moment, Yi Xian undoubtedly didn't care about anything else. He couldn't care so much. He had to break through himself now. Because the higher sky realm was really not enough. He had to reach the nether passage tier. At this moment, everyone discovered that Yi Xian was only in the higher sky realm. The higher sky realm already had the strength to kill a divine unity tier elite. So what if he reached the nether passage tier? The more they thought about it, the more terrifying it was. Not far away, Mu Qingxian obviously also realized the seriousness of the matter, and his originally calm expression became serious at this moment. Higher sky realm. If Yi Xian reached the nether passage tier. Thinking up to this point, Mu Qingxuan's pupils shrank slightly, and he suddenly turned his head to the right not far away. If you can kill him, an additional 100 million gold coins and 500,000 supreme-grade spirit stones. There was no movement. Seeing this scene, Mu Qingxuan's expression instantly darkened. In the distance, Lu Banzwang and the others firmly surrounded Yi Xian. In front of them was 1,000 Tang Empire's heavy cavalry. 1,000 heavy cavalry galloped over, and the earth was already shaking. Aside from this 1,000 Tang Empire's heavy cavalry, there were also 19 Kuraki Academy's Dao soldiers. In the surroundings, there were still assassins from the Dark Realm. Aside from them, there was also Wu Yi, who was ranked third on the martial roll. From the lineup, Yi Xian's side didn't have any advantage. However, Lu Banzwang and the other 11 people didn't retreat. The 12 people firmly guarded beside Yi Xian, not retreating an inch. Lu Banzwang, who was in the lead, suddenly took a step forward. She took out a large flatbread, took a bite, and then hid it again. Everyone. At this moment, Lu Banzwang suddenly squatted on the ground, her right hand lightly touching the ground. At this moment, her entire person suddenly became quiet. After a moment of silence, she suddenly raised her head and pressed her right hand down. Earth collapse. Her voice fell. Boom. The ground in an area of 300 m suddenly trembled violently. In the blink of an eye, the ground in front of Lu Banzwang cracked apart. At the same time, a powerful force capable of obliterating the heavens and the earth swept out from within the cracked ground. The 100-plus cavalrymen in the lead were shaken to a halt by this force, and some of the cavalrymen at the front were even torn apart while blood sprayed all over the ground. But that was not the end. Lu Banzwang suddenly leaped up and arrived directly above the heavy cavalry. In the next moment, her body suddenly flipped in the air. After a moment of silence, she suddenly fell from the sky and landed in the middle of the heavy cavalry. Boom! An earth-shattering explosion suddenly rang out from within the group of heavy cavalry. Then, countless heavy cavalry flew out in all directions. In the distance, Mu Qingxian looked coldly at Lu Banzwang, and then he looked at Yi Xian. Kill this person first. Kill Yi Xian. The Dao soldiers of Xueqi Academy charged directly towards Yi Xian's location. Apart from them, there were also some ghostly shadows and some elites who had rushed over. Ling Han took a step forward. His right hand gripped the long spear tightly. He stared fixedly at the Dao soldiers that were charging at him, and grinned viciously. Brothers, if we die in battle today, remember to continue to be brothers in our next life. No one will be left behind. After saying that, he suddenly stomped his right foot and soared into the sky. In the air, his aura suddenly soared. Then, he swooped down with a long spear in his hand. Around the long spear, there was a dazzling spear ray and spear intent. Wherever the spear passed, the air was instantly torn and shattered, and the sound of air exploding continuously rang out. Below, Yi Li's body suddenly became illusory. In the next moment, the ground under his feet suddenly cracked. Then he turned into an afterimage and charged out. The rest of the people also rushed out. 10 people against 19 Dao soldiers, 1,000 heavy cavalry, and those ghostly assassins. How could they resist? The moment the battle started, Ling Han and the others were directly crushed. Lu Banzwang wanted to return to defend, but he was firmly trapped by the heavy cavalry. Pang! A man suddenly fell in front of Yi Xian. The man lay on the ground, and blood flowed continuously from his mouth. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, then placed a storage ring in front of Yi Xian. Brother Yi, I'm Wang Ming. This is all my savings. Help me bring them to my mother. Your son is unfilial and can't fulfill his filial duties. As he finished speaking, he suddenly stood up. In the next moment, he charged into the distance like a madman. However, before he could take a few steps, a long spear suddenly pierced through his chest. Wang Ming's body stiffened, and he stared blankly at the distant horizon. Soon, there was no color in his eyes. The Dao soldier pulled out his spear and charged directly at Yi Xian. However, when he was still a few meters away from Yi Xian, a man suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. The man charged forward, and at this moment, the Dao soldier raised his spear and stabbed. The man did not dodge, and allowed the soldier's spear to pierce into his abdomen. Not only that, but he also charged forward, allowing the spear to pierce through his entire body, and the dagger in his hand stabbed straight into the Dao soldier's throat. Chi! Blood splattered from the two of them. The man retreated in front of Yi Xian. On his hand, a storage ring suddenly fell off and slowly fell in front of Yi Xian. Li Feng. As his voice fell, his eyes slowly closed. And at this moment, a figure crashed in front of Yi Xian. This person was Ling Han. At this moment, his whole body was covered in wounds, especially his right hand, which had already split open countless times. He could barely even hold his spear. Ling Han's back was facing Yi Xian. He raised his head and looked at the 6 or 7 Dao soldiers that were charging towards him from afar. Brother Yi, the brothers have really tried their best. As his voice fell, the storage ring on his finger suddenly fell in front of Yi Xian. Immediately after, a sinister smile appeared at the corners of his lips, and he was about to charge towards those Dao soldiers. And at this moment, a hand suddenly pressed down on his shoulder. Yi Xian's hand. Yi Xian slowly walked towards those 5 or 6 Dao soldiers in the distance. When he walked in front of Li Feng's corpse, he paused slightly, and at this moment, those 5 or 6 Dao soldiers had already charged to a distance of several meters in front of him. Yi Xian faced those Dao soldiers. At this moment, his cheeks were already covered in tears. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian suddenly raised his head and roared like a wild beast. Kill! Wang! The sound of a sword rang out, and immediately after, a sword suddenly flew out from his body. Several meters away, a Dao soldier did not even have time to react, and his head was directly cut off. Seeing this scene, Mu Qingxuan's expression instantly changed. Peak stage of ethereal opening tier. True grade sword. And at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly disappeared from where he was, and the next moment, another Dao soldier in front of him was sent flying. Instant kill. It was a direct instant kill. The expressions of the remaining 2 Dao soldiers changed, and at this moment, a sword slashed towards them. One of the Dao soldiers hurriedly raised his spear and stabbed. This stab directly stabbed the tip of the spirit and elegant sword, but the moment the two came into contact, the long spear was instantly split into 2, and was as brittle as tofu. Sword light flashed. One after another, heads instantly flew out, and blood spurted out like a pillar. In an instant, the few Dao soldiers in front of Yi Xian were completely killed. And Yi Xian did not stop, and instead directly charged to the other side. Then, a strange scene unfolded. Wherever Yi Xian went, he basically killed all of them in an instant. Every single strike of his was an instant kill, and no one could stop a single strike from Yi Xian. After Yi Xian joined the battle, the situation was instantly reversed. Nearby, Mu Qingxian stared fixedly at Yi Xian, and his face was slightly pale. Yi Xian is only at the peak stage of the ethereal opening realm, but he can already instantly kill the Dao soldiers of Xueqi Academy. What if he attains the divine combination realm? When he thought up to here, Mu Qingxuan's expression instantly became slightly ferocious. He opened his right hand, and a letter suddenly burst into flames. In next to no time, a flame suddenly appeared in the distant horizon. A signal. Mu Qingxian slowly closed his eyes. This person must die. In the distance, Yi Xian was still slaughtering madly. He had gone berserk, and everywhere he passed, heads flew into the air. No one could stop his sword. After he devoured the black sword, he could easily instantly kill a Nether Passage realm expert without using the energy of the earth. He was strong, and so was his sword. In a short period of time, only a few of the soldiers around Yi Xian had been killed, and the remaining soldiers and experts from all over Qingzhou were also retreating. They were simply unstoppable. Right now, Yi Xian was killing whoever he saw. However, none of the Dao soldiers retreated. Even though 5 or 6 of them had been killed by Yi Xian, none of the Dao soldiers retreated. Every single one of them was fighting to the death. Only 4 or 5 of the Dao soldiers were left. Retreat! Not far away, Mu Qingxian suddenly shouted angrily. However, the group of Dao soldiers still did not retreat. Not only did 5 Dao soldiers not retreat, but they also charged at Yi Xian. Seeing this, Mu Qingxian was instantly furious. Fool! Not far away, a Dao soldier turned his head and glanced at Mu Qingxian. We swear to protect the dignity of Xueqi Academy with our lives. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and charged at Yi Xian. Yi Xian suddenly vanished on the spot. At the same time, a strand of light flashed. In the next moment, the head of a Dao soldier that was over 10 m away flew into the air. Blood sprayed out like a fountain. Yi Xian suddenly appeared behind that Dao soldier. He stretched out his left hand, and the spirit beauty sword fell firmly into his grasp. Meanwhile, 4 Dao soldiers had charged over to Yi Xian. Yi Xian didn't draw his sword, and he suddenly opened his eyes instead. Hiss! Hiss! 2 rays of light pierced through the center of the brows of 2 Dao soldiers. It was fast. These 2 streaks of sword light were simply too fast. Coupled with the fact that they were so close to each other, they weren't able to react at all before they were instantly killed. At the moment when the 2 rays of light pierced through the center of the brows of 2 Dao soldiers, Yi Xian suddenly vanished on the spot. Hiss! Hiss! The bodies of the remaining 2 Dao soldiers suddenly stiffened on the spot, and very quickly, their heads fell off their necks. At this moment, there were a few bloody holes all over Yi Xian's body, especially his left shoulder, which had been pierced by a spear. Yi Xian turned around and walked over to Ling Han. Ling Han held the spear tightly with both hands, and his head was leaning against the body of the spear. He was no longer breathing. Yi Xian suddenly knelt down, and his head continuously hit the ground as he bawled like a child. P.S. Chapter 4. Surprise? Surprise. Chapter 139. At this moment, a voice suddenly sounded in Yi Xian's ears. Brother Yi. I'm not dead yet. Hearing this voice, Yi Xian's body trembled slightly, and the next moment, he suddenly looked up. At this moment, Ling Han was looking down at him. Although blood was flowing from the corner of his mouth, he was indeed not dead, and was still smiling. Yi Xian was stunned, then stood up and hugged Ling Han. Around them, Yi Li and the others who were still alive also ran over and hugged him tightly. Beside them, Lu Banzwang glanced at Yi Xian and the others, then sat on the ground, took out a large flatbread, and began to nibble slowly. As he nibbled, the flatbread had already turned red. Tragic. This battle was extremely tragic for both sides. Nearly 100 of the Tang Empire's heavy cavalry died, and dozens of the surrounding martial artists from all over Qingzhou also died. Among them, the Tao soldiers of Xueqi Academy were completely annihilated. And Yi Xian and the others were also tragic. Li Feng and Wang Ming died in battle, and the others were also seriously injured, especially Ling Han and Yi Li, who were not only seriously injured, but also half dead. The two of them had completely lost the ability to fight, and not only them, the others could also be said to have no ability to fight. And around them, the Tang Empire soldiers had not retreated yet. After a moment, Yi Xian walked in front of Li Feng and Wang Ming. Looking at the two corpses, Yi Xian and the others were silent. Yi Xian stood in front of Li Feng and Wang Ming for a long time, and finally, he placed his right hand on Li Feng's shoulder. Come, in the next life, continue to be brothers. In the next life, be brothers. After Yi Xian placed the two corpses, he turned to Ling Han and the others. Recuperate. Ling Han and the others sat down cross-legged, and each of them took a golden sore pill. Yi Xian turned around and walked in front of Lu Banzwang, who was sitting on the ground. Her hands were already a bloody mess. Yi Xian squatted down. Sorry, I couldn't protect them. Lu Banzwang turned her head and looked into the distance. After a while, she shook her head. We're all prepared to die. At this point, she suddenly turned to look at Yi Xian. Protect the people who are still alive, because they call you Big Brother now. Big Brother. At the corners of Yi Xian's eyes, 2 streams of clear liquid slowly flowed out. Lu Banzwang patted Yi Xian's shoulder lightly. They're willing to die for you, which proves that they won't regret it. They don't want you to feel guilty, and you shouldn't feel guilty. What you need to do now is to avenge them. Revenge. Yi Xian stood up and turned to face Mu Qingxian. Mu Qingxian looked at Yi Xian with a calm expression. Yi Xian grinned. If your Xueqi Academy wants to play, then I, Yi Xian, will play with you until the end. In this lifetime, if I don't die, then your Xueqi Academy will die. Mu Qingxian said indifferently, We have been like this since a long time ago. As he spoke, he raised his right hand and waved it lightly. Rumble. A group of cavalry suddenly appeared in the distance. There were about 3,000 of them. Tang Empire's heavy cavalry. In addition, there were thousands of Tang Empire's infantrymen. Imperial Army. This time, almost all the elites of Tang Empire's Imperial Palace had come out. This was truly a desperate gamble. In addition, 40 people suddenly appeared behind Mu Qingxian. These 40 people were all in the divine combination realm. In addition, there were also some assassins in the dark. These assassins were the most terrifying because no one knew when they would make a move. At this moment, Lu Banzwang suddenly pointed at Wu Yi. He just sneak attacked Wang Ming. Hearing this, Yi Xian looked at Wu Yi, who was ranked 3rd on the martial roll. The latter narrowed his eyes and slowly clenched his fists. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly disappeared. The moment Yi Xian disappeared, Wu Ye's pupils suddenly shrank. In the next moment, he clenched his right hand into a fist. He half-squatted and retracted his right hand. Then he suddenly blasted forward and shouted angrily, Yuan Qi collapse. With a punch, an energy fist mark accompanied by a terrifying aura shook out of his hand. The powerful fist mark and aura instantly shattered the surrounding air, and the area directly became a vacuum. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly leaped and slashed down with a sword light. One sword to decide life and death. With a swing of the sword, the energy fist print instantly crumbled. Immediately after, a figure landed behind Wu Yi. It was Yi Xian. Wu Ye's body stiffened. After a moment of silence, his eyebrows suddenly split open and blood gushed out. Instant kill. At this moment, his one sword to decide life and death was much stronger than the previous one sword to decide life and death. Or it should be said that it couldn't be compared at all. After he instantly killed Wu Yi, Yi Xian turned around and faced Mu Qingxuan's side. A figure had silently appeared by Mu Qingxuan's side. The mistress of the Dark Dimension of Pine Prefecture. One of the top experts of Pine Prefecture. The mistress of the Dark Dimension suddenly said, "Aren't you going to begin? Wait for them to recover?" Mu Qingxian said indifferently, "All the Dao soldiers of my Karaki Academy have perished." "What? Isn't that enough?" Even though his voice was calm, it carried a strand of rage. Because both sides had agreed that the Dao soldiers of the Dark Dimension would attack once the Dao soldiers of Karaki Academy were born. However, the Dark Dimension had only sent a few assassins, and these assassins weren't Dao soldiers of the Central Divine Prefecture's Dark Dimension. Up until now, the Dao soldiers of the Dark Dimension hadn't appeared. The mistress of the Dark Dimension fell silent for a moment, and then she said, "I'm slightly late." Mu Qingxian shook his head and smiled. "Late? Mistress of the Dark Dimension, are you a fucking pig?" The temperature in the surroundings instantly cooled down. Mu Qingxian stared fixedly at the mistress of the Dark Dimension, and then he pointed at Yi Xian. "Do you see that? He's already at the Ethereal Opening Realm, and ordinary Ethereal Opening Realm experts are utterly unable to resist a single strike of his sword. This is the consequence of all of you trying to play petty tricks. My Karaki Academy risked our lives to fight him, yet all of you schemed against him from behind. Are all of you fucking pigs from the Dark Dimension?" He was furious. Mu Qingxian was undoubtedly extremely furious. If the Dao soldiers of the Dark Dimension and Karaki Academy had attacked together, then they would have had a very good chance of killing Yi Xian and the others. But the Dark Dimension didn't. They just watched as the Dao soldiers of Karaki Academy were completely annihilated. The mistress of the Dark Dimension hadn't spoken when Mu Qingxian laughed coldly and said, Right. Your Dark Dimension wanted to use the Dao soldiers of my Karaki Academy to exhaust Yi Xian and the others, and then your Dark Dimension would attack and take advantage of the situation. Now, you've achieved your objective. However, my Karaki Academy isn't playing around anymore. Yi Xian doesn't have to die. Leave him and this group of people to continue growing. I hope your Dark Dimension will be able to eliminate them in the future. As soon as he finished speaking, Mu Qingxian turned around and left. Right at this moment, the mistress of the Dark Dimension suddenly said, Brother Mu, don't be rash. This is my Dark Dimension's fault. Brother Mu, please think of the big picture. Mu Qingxian stopped and sneered. Think of the big picture? Mistress of the Dark Dimension, this Yi Xian is a monster to begin with, and you keep giving him chances. Do you know what your Dark Dimension and my Karaki Academy will face in the future if he doesn't die today? The mistress of the Dark Dimension nodded slightly. Brother Mu, how about this? From now on, neither of us will hold back. If we kill this Yi Xian and the others, your Karaki Academy will take 70% of their belongings. How about that? Mu Qingxian looked coldly at the mistress of the Dark Dimension and didn't speak. Obviously, he had already agreed. The mistress of the Dark Dimension said, Then we can begin. The Dao soldiers of the Dark Dimension were naturally assassins, and assassins definitely couldn't fight head-on because that would greatly reduce their battle prowess. Mu Qingxian raised his head and looked at Yi Xian and the others who weren't far away. Yi Xian held the Spirit Elegant sword and stood in front of them. He just stood there, and his entire person was like a sword, revealing its sharpness. Mu Qingxuan's expression gradually became somewhat ferocious. Kill. As his voice fell, the several thousand heavy cavalry of the Tang Empire suddenly charged. Several thousand cavalry charging together. How terrifying was that? The entire earth was already trembling at this moment. And on both sides of these several thousand heavy cavalry, There were also 3,000 Imperial Guards. The 40 or so divine combination tier elites behind Mu Qingxian suddenly disappeared on the spot, heading straight for Yi Xian and the others. Aside from them, there was still a group of assassins from the Dark Dimension that hadn't appeared yet. Desperate situation. A true desperate situation. This time, Xueqi Academy and the Dark Dimension could be said to have mobilized all the elites that they could currently mobilize. In terms of lineup, Xueqi Academy and the Dark Dimension could be said to have an absolute advantage. Even so, Mu Qingxuan's expression was still grave, and he wasn't confident in his heart. Because Yi Xian and the others had given him too many surprises. In the distance, Yi Xian held the Spirit Elegant Sword and blocked in front of Ling Han and the others. The Spirit Elegant Sword in his hand trembled continuously, and at the same time, his body was exuding a towering battle intent. Battle intent. Battle. At this moment, there was no other thought in Yi Xian's mind. There was only battle. Actually, with his current strength, it was very possible for him to fight his way out. However, he didn't have the slightest thought of escaping, because Ling Han and the others were right behind him. He was already prepared to die in battle. If he could survive, then it would naturally be best for his brothers to live together and venture together. But if he couldn't survive, then his brothers would die in battle together. Lu Banzwang suddenly stood beside Yi Xian. She looked at the people charging over from afar, expressionless. Furthermore, she took out a large flatbread and was munching on it. Yi Xian suddenly said, "I know a person. She's like you, likes to eat, and eats all the time." Lu Banzwang glanced at Yi Xian, and Yi Xian continued, "I feel that if you two were together, it would definitely be very fun." Jianji and Lu Banzwang together. Thinking of this scene, Yi Xian suddenly smiled. If that was really the case, then it would definitely be very fun. One person holding a bun, the other holding a flatbread. Lu Banzwang put away the flatbread and looked into the distance. This might be the last battle. Yi Xian nodded. "Nice to meet you guys." Lu Banzwang said softly, "In our next life, we'll continue to be brothers." Yi Xian laughed. "All right, in our next life, we'll continue to be brothers." After saying this, he was about to rush out, but at this moment, the ground suddenly trembled violently. Everyone in the surroundings was stunned. Everyone looked to the right, and at the end of their line of sight, a black mass suddenly appeared. Soon, that black mass was getting closer and closer to everyone. Demonic beasts. It was a group of demonic beasts, and there were all kinds of demonic beasts. There were as many as 10,000 of them. And on the back of the giant tiger in the lead sat a person. This person was Bai Zhe. Bai Zhe. Bai Zhe rode on the giant tiger. He looked at where Yi Xian was and roared angrily, "Bandit Yi, I'm here." "Me too." Not far from Bai Zhe, there was another giant tiger with a man sitting on it. It was Mo Yunqi. These two guys. Yi Xian was stunned. Chapter 140. They're here. As soon as Lu Banzwang's voice fell, a group of eagles appeared on the horizon. The 9th Mercenary Group. The Tang Empire's soldiers stopped. 3,000 cavalrymen and thousands of Tang elites turned around and prepared for battle. At this moment, they were even more afraid of Bai Zhe and Mo Yunqi, who were charging over with a horde of demonic beasts. Bai Zhe suddenly roared, "Bandit Yi, what are we going to do?" Yi Xian raised his head and looked at Bai Zhe. "Kill. Leave no one alive. Leave no one alive." Bai Zhe roared, "Kill, leave no one alive." As soon as he said that, the speed of the demonic beasts suddenly increased. At this moment, the earth trembled violently. In front of the thousands of cavalrymen, a cavalry general suddenly raised his sword. "Charge! Charge!" As soon as his voice fell, thousands of heavy cavalry suddenly charged out in unison. In addition, thousands of Tang Empire's elite soldiers also charged out. At this moment, a group of eagles suddenly appeared in the sky above them. Then, about 20 people jumped down from the sky. The rugged man in the lead quickly walked up to Lu Banzwang. When he saw Lu Banzwang's appearance, his expression instantly turned ferocious. "Who the F***CK did this?" Lu Banzwang glanced at the rugged man but did not speak. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly pointed at the group of divine combination realm experts in the distance who had already stopped. the boorish man suddenly turned towards the group of God Fusion Realm experts. He opened his right hand and a heavy saber appeared in his palm. In the next instant, he charged towards the group of God Fusion Realm experts with the heavy saber. Leave no one alive. Leave no one alive. The group of people behind the rugged man also charged out. Yi Xian was about to attack when Lu Banzwang suddenly shook his head. No need. Yi Xian was slightly puzzled. At this moment, a mournful scream came from not far away. Yi Xian turned around and was stunned when he sensed the situation in the distance. This was because the 40 over Divine Combination Realm experts were instantly defeated the moment they clashed with the rugged man's group. Crushed. Truly crushed. Although they were all Divine Combination Realm experts and Karaki College had more people, they were no match for the rugged man and his group. The gap between them was just too big. It could be said that the boorish man and the others were much stronger than the Dao soldiers sent by Karaki Academy. On the other side, Mu Qingxuan's expression was extremely ugly. He suddenly turned to look at the mistress of the world and roared, "Still not attacking? Attack!" After a moment of silence, the mistress of the world suddenly shook her head. "It's already over. Let's go." As soon as his voice faded, he directly disappeared. Following which, the Dark World assassins that were hidden in the surroundings also disappeared along with him. Seeing the mistress of the Dark World and the rest leave, Mu Xuanqing's expression was savage to the extreme. In the distance, the group of God Fusion Realm experts wanted to escape, but they discovered that they couldn't escape at all. The 20 people they were facing were much faster than them. Even so, they still chose to escape. They no longer had the confidence to fight. At this moment, the rough man not far away suddenly said angrily, "Don't let a single one of them go. Don't let a single one of them go." The group of Divine Combination Realm experts who wanted to escape fell one after another. On the other side, the experts from all over Qing province who were about to attack didn't hesitate to turn around and flee when they saw this scene. At this time, Yi Xian suddenly disappeared. The exquisite sword was like a bolt of lightning that flashed through the battlefield, and everywhere the exquisite sword passed, it left behind a trail of blood. Instant kill. Not a single one of them could resist a single strike from Yi Xian. For a time, wails and shrill cries resounded incessantly. In less than 20 breaths of time, there were already over 30 corpses around Yi Xian. In Yi Xian's hand, a smear of fresh blood slowly dripped from the exquisite sword. At this moment, the 9th mercenary group's battle had ended as well, and there were also over 40 corpses beneath their feet. Not a single one was left. All of them had been completely annihilated. Yi Xian raised his head to look at Bai Zai and Mo Yunqi. At this moment, the group of demon beasts that Bai Zai brought with him were in an intense battle with the Tang Empire's heavy cavalry, and both sides could be said to be evenly matched. After all, these heavy cavalry and infantry were the elites amongst the elites of the Tang Empire. Yi Xian walked towards the group of Tang soldiers with his sword in hand. At this moment, an old man appeared before Yi Xian. It was the elder of the Tang Empire. The elder gazed at Yi Xian and said, "My Tang Empire has retreated. This matter ends here." Retreat. At this moment, the Tang Empire understood clearly that after the defeat of Karaki Gakkai and the others, the Tang Empire had no advantage at all. Because Yi Xian had such a group of friends in the Central Plains, and these people were extraordinarily terrifying. Coupled with the military strength of the Jiang Empire, it could be said that only the Ning Empire could go against them. Coupled with the appearance of demon beasts within the Tang Empire, and there were so many of them, this battle couldn't be fought. It couldn't be fought. Yi Xian walked over to the elder with his sword in hand and said, "Do you think it'll end just because you want it to?" "Sorry, I don't want it to end." As soon as he finished speaking, he vanished on the spot with his sword in hand. In the distance, a ray of green light suddenly entered the group of heavy cavalry, and in an instant, 6 of them were instantly killed. The elder's face was extremely gloomy when he witnessed this scene, and no one knew what he was thinking. On the other side, the rugged man and the others arrived in front of Lu Banzwang. The rugged man was about to speak when Lu Banzwang had already charged towards the heavy cavalry in the distance. The rugged man was stunned, and then he raised his saber and charged towards the group of soldiers as well. When Lu Banzwang and the others joined the battle instantly became one-sided. It was a slaughter. Yi Xian and the others were geniuses amongst geniuses, so how could these soldiers stop them? All of them could fight a few dozen enemies by themselves. Most importantly, they could accurately kill the commanders of the cavalry and elite infantrymen. Just like that, it didn't take long for the number of heavy cavalry and soldiers to dwindle. Retreat! The elder's voice suddenly resounded. Only then did the soldiers of the Tang Empire start to retreat, and their retreat made them even weaker. Thus, even more of them died. The elder clenched his fists tightly as he stared fixedly at Yi Xian, who stood amidst the crowd, and his eyes were filled with undisguised killing intent. He really wanted to attack. If he attacked, he would be able to stop Yi Xian and the others. No matter how monstrous Yi Xian and the others were, they weren't monstrous to the point of being able to go against a myriad lore realm expert. However, he didn't dare to attack. Because once he did, the entire Tang Empire might perish. A sword immortal could really destroy a small country with ease. Around a quarter of an hour later, Yi Xian and the others stopped. The ground around them was covered in severed limbs and corpses, and blood had already dyed the ground red. Slaughter! Yi Xian turned to look at the nearby elder. Did it look good? The elder stared fixedly at Yi Xian. You're a martial artist, and they're soldiers. Are you proud of slaughtering soldiers as a martial artist? Yi Xian shook his head. I'm a martial artist, but I'm also a citizen of the state of Jiang. I only know that if you soldiers enter the state of Jiang, countless citizens of the state of Jiang will become like them. War was very cruel. One could imagine what would happen to the state of Jiang if the Tang Empire soldiers entered the state of Jiang. The elder took a deep look at Yi Xian, then turned around and disappeared. Yi Xian walked in front of Bai Zai and Mo Yunqi. The two of them glanced at Yi Xian. Finally, Bai Zai said in a deep voice, I went back to Mount Mang, so I'm late. Yi Xian shook his head. You're not late. However, how did you demon beasts come to the Tang Empire? Bai Zai explained, there are borders between countries, but there are no borders for demon beasts. We can cross the steepest mountains, and that's how we came here. Yi Xian nodded, then turned around and walked in front of the boorish man. The boorish man and the others were also looking at Yi Xian. Yi Xian said, Thank you. The boorish man said indifferently, What are you thanking me for? We're not here to help you. With that, he turned to look at Lu Banzwang. Banzwang, come home with me. Lu Banzwang said indifferently, I'm not going back. The boorish man sighed in a low voice. Your anger should have subsided by now. Really, Dad's temper has become irritable recently, and he often sits alone in the courtyard in silence. He must be regretting it. Come home with me. Lu Banzwang looked at Yi Xian. I'm already a member of the bandit mercenary group. Bandit mercenary group? The boorish man frowned slightly. What bandit mercenary group? As he spoke, he turned to look at Yi Xian. Yi Xian said, I've just established a mercenary group, and I'm the big brother. Big brother. Hearing this, the people behind the boorish man suddenly laughed loudly. At this moment, Ling Han and the others arrived behind Yi Xian. The boorish man sized up Yi Xian. You're a blind man, and you're my sister's big brother? You. Yi Xian suddenly pointed his sword at the boorish man. Cut the crap. Come, let's fight first. Let's fight first. The boorish man glanced at Yi Xian, smiled and said, You've got guts. If you're to my liking, then let's fight. As he said this, he suddenly slashed at Yi Xian with his heavy saber. Peak stage of the divine combination tier. Moreover, he was a saber grandmaster. Yi Xian didn't waste any words, and raised his sword to stab. One strike to decide life and death. In the instant that Yi Xian struck, the smiles of the people behind the boorish man instantly froze. A sword grandmaster. A sword grandmaster who wasn't even 20 years old was rare, even in the entire central divine continent. The saber and the sword clashed. Boom! Yi Xian and the boorish man both retreated rapidly, and with every step they took, the ground would tremble violently and then crack. At this moment, Yi Xian and the boorish man stopped at the same time. The boorish man glanced at the big saber in his hand. His big saber was already full of cracks, and not only that, but his entire arm was also cracked. The boorish man looked up at Yi Xian. Sword and body dual cultivation. Yi Xian suddenly clenched his left hand, and in an instant, a wave of battle intent swept out. Battle intent. Martial Dao Grandmaster. The boorish man narrowed his eyes. Martial, body, and sword triple cultivation. Yi Xian nodded, and he walked in front of the boorish man. Yi Xian, let's be friends? The boorish man looked at Yi Xian for a long time and finally he said, Lu Kuang. The corner of Yi Xian's mouth lifted slightly. Interested in doing something big? Lu Kuang asked. Tell me about it. Yi Xian turned and looked into the distance. Let's go to the Tang Imperial Palace and borrow some money from the Emperor. Lu Kuang glanced at Yi Xian. The kind that doesn't need to be returned? Yi Xian said with a straight face, I'm not that kind of person. At the side, Mo Yunqi directly vomited. Because now, it was really time for the country to perish. Tang Empire's imperial capital. Just like that, Yi Xian and the others swaggered straight to the palace. During this time, no one came to stop them, nor did they dare to. No one could stop Yi Xian and the others if the 10,000 Dharma realm powerhouses did not take action. After a while, Yi Xian and the others arrived in front of the imperial palace. At this moment, the gate of the imperial palace was closed, and thousands of archers gathered on the wall. An old man stood in front of the imperial palace. It was the Tang Empire's elder. The elder stared at Yi Xian and said, Do you really want to fight to the death? If you do this, everyone... At this moment, a sword light suddenly flashed in the field. The next moment, the heads of several Tang Empire soldiers on the wall flew. The moment Yi Xian made his move, Lu Kuang and the others suddenly rushed to the top of the wall. In an instant, dozens of archers on the wall were instantly killed. With the attack of Bai Zhe and the others, the battle on the wall instantly became one-sided. Yi Xian suddenly pointed at the palace gate in the distance, and a flying sword directly slashed at the palace gate. Boom! The palace gate instantly collapsed and fell to the ground. Behind the palace gate, there were more than 2,000 imperial guards of the Tang Empire. These 2,000 imperial guards stared at Yi Xian and the others. There was no fear in their eyes. Only unafraid of death. Unafraid of death. They had no way out, they could only fight to the death. Yi Xian did not waste any time and directly rushed towards the soldiers with the spirit elegant sword. And behind him was a horde of nearly 10,000 demonic beasts. From the beginning to the end, Yi Xian did not care about the elder. The elder clenched his fists tightly, his face gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. Yi Xian directly rushed into the group of soldiers, and every time he waved the spirit elegant sword, a bloody head would be cut off. And when the demonic beasts rushed in, the soldiers were instantly routed. Half an hour later, the soldiers on the wall were all dead. In front of Yi Xian, there were corpses everywhere. It was truly a river of blood. From the beginning to the end, the elder did not make a move. He wanted to, but he did not dare. It was not only because Yi Xian had the support of a sword immortal, but also because Lu Kuang and the others were all from the divine central continent. Were they ordinary people? They were definitely not ordinary people. If he were to attack these people, the consequences would be very, very serious. Just like that, Yi Xian and the others went straight into the depths of the imperial palace. Soon, Yi Xian and the others arrived in front of a stone staircase. The stone staircase was very wide, nearly 1,000 feet long. At the end of the stone staircase stood a middle-aged man dressed in a dragon robe. This person was the emperor of the Tang Empire. There were also some soldiers and officials gathered around the emperor. There were even concubines. In this day and age, there were many women who practiced martial arts. Yi Xian held his sword and slowly walked towards the king of the Tang Kingdom. The soldiers around the king of the Tang Kingdom immediately took a step forward and stood in front of the king of the Tang Kingdom. The emperor walked out, and behind him was an old man with 2 sabers on his back. The old man's gaze had been fixed on Yi Xian from the beginning, and it had never stopped. The emperor shook his head and chuckled. I've calculated everything except you. I never thought that the Tang Empire would end up like this because of you. Yi Xian turned to Lu Banzwang and the others. Go and search. Take away everything that can be taken away. Whoever dares to stop us. Then slaughter the imperial palace. Slaughter the imperial palace. Hearing this, the Tang Empire's people were furious. However, no one dared to make a move. Those who could beat them did not dare to fight, And those who could not beat them did not dare to fight. Just like that, Lu Banzwang and the others went straight to the imperial treasury of the Tang Empire, looting the imperial palace. Ling Han and the others were excited. This was the imperial palace, the imperial treasury of a country. Even Lu Kuang and the others from the 9th Mercenary Group were excited. This was the first time they had robbed the imperial palace. In the field, none of the Tang Empire soldiers and experts dared to stop them. They did not dare to stop them at all. Everyone was looking at Yi Xian. This young man in front of them said that he would slaughter the imperial palace. This was definitely not a joke. As long as anyone dared to make a move, the entire Tang Empire would instantly become a Shura purgatory. For a moment, the field was quiet. At this moment, many martial artists suddenly rushed in from outside the imperial palace. These martial artists had come from all over the imperial capital. When they saw the corpses around Yi Xian and the others, these martial artists who were originally full of anger suddenly quieted down. Or rather, their imposing manner suddenly withered. There were not just a few corpses around Yi Xian and the others, but 5,000 to 6,000 corpses. The entire imperial palace was filled with an unpleasant smell of blood. Make a move? No one dared to make a move. Because Yi Xian did not make a move. If Yi Xian made a move, they would definitely fight to the death. However, Yi Xian did not make a move. In front of Yi Xian, the king of the Tang Empire stared at Yi Xian, his right hand clenched tightly. Fight to the death? If Yi Xian made a move, everyone in the Tang Empire would definitely fight to the death because the Tang Empire had no other choice. Since they were all going to die, why not fight to the death? But since Yi Xian did not make a move, many people did not have the idea of fighting to the death. Not to mention the soldiers around him, even he himself did not have the idea of fighting to the death. If they could live, who would want to die? At this moment, Lu Banzwang and the others were frantically looting. Almost everything valuable was taken away. In an imperial palace, how could there be a lack of valuable things? Therefore, it didn't take long for everyone's spatial rings to be filled to the brim. Fortunately, they found some spatial rings in the palace's treasury. Although there weren't many, only a dozen or so, it was enough. In front of the stone steps, Yi Xian and a group of demon beasts were still confronting the king of the Tang Empire and the others. More and more martial artists from the imperial capital came, but no one dared to make a move. The king of the Tang Empire also did not make a move. Obviously, he did not want to die yet. If he wanted to die, he would have already ordered for everyone to perish together. About half an hour later, Lu Banzwang and the others came out from the depths of the imperial palace. Everyone had an undisguised smile and excitement on their faces. Even Lu Kuang and the 9th Mercenary Group were full of smiles. After looting an imperial palace, it could be seen how rich they were. Lu Banzwang and the others came to Yi Xian's side. At this moment, the atmosphere suddenly became a little tense. At this moment, outside the imperial palace, a large number of troops had arrived. They were all troops from some cities around the imperial capital. Bai Zhe led a group of demon beasts to block in front of the troops, while Lu Kuang and Lu Banzwang looked at Yi Xian. To fight or not to fight? If they fight, it will actually be a bloody battle. Because there were a lot of people from the Tang Empire, and most of them were troops. Of course, if Yi Xian said to fight, then everyone would definitely fight. Everything depended on Yi Xian's decision. Yi Xian walked in front of the king of the Tang Empire. I'll give you two choices. First, follow me back to the Zhang Empire now, and you will personally negotiate with my king. Second, I will kill you. Negotiate? The king chuckled. Is it to be a prisoner? I am the king of a country. You want me to be a prisoner? You're thinking too much, let me tell you. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly slashed out with his sword. The sword was extremely fast, and many people in the field could not react in time. In an instant, the field suddenly quieted down. The king of the Tang Empire stared at Yi Xian, his eyes full of disbelief. At this moment, a light breeze blew, and the king's head suddenly fell from his neck, blood pouring out like a pillar. In an instant, everyone in the field was stunned. He was killed just like that? Not to mention the people of the Tang Empire. Even Lu Banzwang and the others were stunned. At this moment, Yi Xian wiped the blood on the spirit elegant sword, and then said softly, "Not going to the Zhang Empire? Then go to hell." Having said that, he faced the imperial family not far away. Come, let's change the king, then we'll continue talking. Everyone, you're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.